Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So we have another confirmation hearing. Yes, another one of those nights that I can't sleep. I've never restreamed live now from Fox, so we're gonna try it. I don't know if it'll work, but we're gonna give it the old college try.
Can't account for its own activities. This is not just bureaucratic incompetence, it's
And then I'm gonna
emblematic
go
of
make me some
fever issue,
coffee
an agency unsure of its own
and
boundaries and commitments. How can an agency fulfill its mission
get
or earn
started.
the American people's trust if it doesn't even know the extent of its own operations? But the problems don't stop there. Instead of focusing on critical threats like
But I
securing the
will say
southwest
this:
border, DHS has shifted its gaze
if I
inward,
can't restream
targeting law abiding Americans.
this channel,
DHS under the Biden administration has often
there's
used its vast powers to target
other ones
Americans
covering the same
exercising their
thing. So,
constitutional rights. It's become an agency more focused on policing speech, monitoring social media, and
so let's
labeling
make
political
sure
dissent as domestic
everything's
terrorism
working
than
good
addressing
because
genuine security threats. While cartels traffic people and
it
fentanyl
sounds like
pose an
everything's
unguarded
working
border,
good.
DHS has spent its time and resources
So I'm
creating
gonna go
partisan
get me
disinformation
a cup of
wars,
coffee,
spying on Americans through invasive surveillance technologies.
get
The
everything
mission
turned
drift
on.
is dangerous. Every dollar spent monitoring law abiding citizens is a dollar not spent securing the homeland. Every moment spent targeting political opponents
So
is a moment not
I'll be
addressing
back.
real threats like border security, cyber attacks, or the rising influence of adversarial nation states. The priorities of DHS have been deeply distorted, and the American people are paying the price. And what about DHS's response to COVID 19, arguably one of the greatest threats to Homeland Security? The answer is clear: nothing. They knew nothing of the origins, they didn't study the issue, and they had no information about gain of function research. We've seen firsthand how unchecked government overreach leads to waste, fraud, and abuse. We cannot let DHS become yet another agency that operates behind a veil of secrecy. The American people deserve transparency, accountability, and leadership that puts national security and liberty hand in hand, not at odds with each other. Today, we gather to consider the nomination of Governor Kristi Noem to serve as the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security. I hope this hearing will set the tone for this committee's work in the new Congress to restore transparency and accountability to an executive branch that has grown unchecked. Governor Noem, if confirmed, you will lead an agency that has lost its way. Your record as governor of South Dakota and a former member of Congress demonstrates your willingness to make difficult decisions in the face of significant political pressure and to put the interest of American people first. You have the opportunity today to address how your background and vision will translate to leading one of the most critical and scrutinized departments in the federal government. This is the first of many consequential moments for this committee as we renew our commitment to the constitutional oversight role that Congress must assert. I have no doubt that the nominee will consider in the coming weeks and months that you will be up for the challenge. Governor Noem, thank you for your willingness to serve, and I yield to the ranking member for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Paul. Governor Noem, it's great to see you here today, and I want to first thank you for making yourself available not only to the entire committee, but the discussions that we had in my office, going perhaps a little more in depth in the issues than is possible in a hearing like this, and having that open and frank conversation is something that I appreciate. Also appreciate your willingness to spend time with committee staff as we conduct our due diligence and review of your qualifications and a background to serve as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. As our third largest federal agency with more than 240,000 employees and an operating budget of more than $100 billion, the Department of Homeland Security requires strong, stable, and principled leadership. Our nation faces serious threats and security challenges, from securing our borders and combating terrorism to preventing cyber attacks and responding to our nation's increasing number of natural disasters. And DHS is the first line of defense in all of those areas. I appreciated the conversations we had at today's hearing, where we discussed the importance of ensuring that our nation's borders are safe and secure. And while we must address the significant challenges we face on the southern border, we also need to ensure that there are sufficient resources to secure our northern border, something I know you're very familiar with as the governor of your state, including building out our northern border mission center. This is especially important in my home state of Michigan, which has two of
Okay,
the
I'm back,
nation's
everyone.
busiest border crossings. And we're going to be adding another span shortly, the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which will open later this year. To
Okay.
facilitate the lawful trade,
Like I said last time.
at those ports of entry that are absolutely critical to our economy. I've worked on legislation to hire.
I got me a book here.
Officers to meet increased staffing demands. We must secure our borders, but we also know it is well time past to streamline our immigration and our asylum process as well. In addition to border security, DHS is responsible for addressing many threats that face our nation. Just a few weeks ago,
Got
Americans were shocked
Israel,
to see
Ukraine,
New Orleans and Las Vegas,
and other.
That terrorism and radicalization remain very real and ongoing threats to our homeland.
So when they
mention
Ukraine
and domestic terrorism,
or
as well as extremism, a top priority. In this complex environment, it is essential that DHS
or Israel
on all terrorism threats,
or
track and report data to Congress and to the
or some other
people,
foreign country. We'll put it down there.
To ensure the department is effectively addressing all types of terrorist threats. We've also seen the persistent cyber attacks are still a very serious threat, in fact, an increasing threat. A recent attack from Chinese-based hackers infiltrated the Treasury Department. On top of ongoing Salt Typhoon.
If you haven't watched the video yet,
U.S. telecommunications companies. There's no question.
I got my computer back up and running.
The way in protecting our networks from foreign adversaries.
It's been running
criminals and so-called hacktivists
for 3 days total now.
Security, as well as to our economy.
I set it up yesterday at about
Federal Emergency Management Agency
3 p.m. on my desk.
To address the increasing number of natural disasters.
Got it running.
Communities as a result of change.
It hasn't did the whole, you know, glitch thing that it was doing, the power surge thing.
In California and countless other severe storms and flooding events all across our
country.
We need leadership at the department that will ensure our
we shall see.
Responds to communities when
I'm glad to have it back. Glad to have my terrible beastie back.
Our nation and the American people depend on the department's ability to effectively address these wide-ranging threats. So, Governor Noem, thank you again for your willingness to serve in this incredibly important position. And thank you for being here today. I look forward to having a comprehensive discussion about how you intend to lead this.
I wish I would have restreamed the
series of national
Pete Hegseth one. And if anybody knows,
this morning, Governor Noem will be introduced by Majority
when
Leader
is
Senator
God dang it?
Kramer. Senator Thune, you're recognized.
When is Tom?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Peters and members of the.
When is Tom Homan's
I'm very pleased
confirmation
to
hearing?
be here today to introduce
because
Senator
man,
outstanding governor who has been nominated by.
Oh,
President
and here's
Trump to
another
serve
thing
as
I'm,
Secretary of the Department of Homeland
and I'm not
Security.
the only one. I've been seeing
I've
more and more
known,
videos about
Kristi
this.
Noem for a long time.
Why
She has a very
does it take
personal and family story, which
2.5 months
her entrance into the public arena, and I'm
to
sure
get the new
we'll
president
hear
in?
about that from her. But I've
The
observed
day
that she has
after
gone through the state legislature as a leader,
we had the whole electoral thing
House of Representatives,
where they voting like, yes, you know, Trump is confirmed to be president.
Our state's interest there for
Very next day, he should be in the White House.
Governor, and I think she brings to this job a number of things.
You know, he can. The president can camp out on a fucking couch
when it comes to managing
till
she led our state through,
you know, they get furniture moved in and stuff.
What were extraordinary circumstances?
Because if you didn't see the video that I did, and not many of you did,
South Dakota, frankly, a magnet for people from other states who were trying to flee or get away from some of the heavy-handed.
You know how Trump said he was gonna
state open. Free
make
and
people that were working from home go back to work.
And I would say too,
well, Biden just Biden or his administration just signed a 5-year memorandum
it's
So
gonna
these
require
lazy
a
sons of
skill set, which
bitches
I believe she possesses. It's
that
gonna
are still
require
working from home
tremendous amount of
because
persistence and determination,
they're
which I think
either
she has,
too
and it
scared
also
or
energy,
I think they're just
she
flat
has in
out freaking
abundance.
lazy
And frankly, what I would say is just absolute toughness. It's going to take some tough and
and
hard
don't
work
want to come back
to get
back
things
to
back in
work.
order. And I want to refer to something she said in her State of the State address earlier this week to South Dakotans, and that is
And
in the last 4 years we've seen a complete disregard for the security of our
if
borders and the
anybody
safety of the
watching
American
this
people, to say nothing for the rule
thinks
of
that
law.
there's been a
Chaos
peaceful
at the southern
transition of
border and
power,
administrations left our country vulnerable to
look at all the shit
security concerns,
Biden's
terrorist
done
increase to cross-border criminal
since
activity,
knowing that
trafficking.
Donald
I
Trump
think
was
it's
going to be
well
the next
documented,
president.
and I think it's high time that it gets fixed. And
Two of
she
the things
will
that I
see
know
a
of are
president that
no drilling in the Gulf of
has
Mexico
capabilities, the qualities, the experience, and again, frankly,
and
determination and toughness to solve what is a very, very
they
tough issue.
over
One that is
49,000
desperately in need of
federal
solutions.
employees that are
So
working from
I'm
home
pleased to be able to be here today to introduce our great governor.
get to work
And,
from home for another
thank you
5
for
years.
your consideration. I look forward to this committee acting on her nomination.
And
I look forward to voting for her on the
I
floor
said
of
this
the
in my
United States Senate
video,
to be the next Secretary of the Department
and
of
I don't care
Homeland
who it
Security.
pisses
Thank you,
off.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kramer.
Why
Paul.
do all these damn committee hearings?
Once again, I find myself in full agreement with the majority leader.
People just sit there and yakety 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 yak.
So this is a very special opportunity for me. And first thing I want to do is thank nearly all of you. I got into almost every one of the
Like,
officers
come on,
as her very
ask a
amateurish,
fucking question, get a
insincere
fucking answer.
and the
It shouldn't
blessing
take
for
you
me
5
is not
minutes to
only
ask a
be
fucking
with my
question.
good friend and former colleague, but to learn a lot about this committee that I'm not on. And to
Like
get an
the
inside view
the
of
last
various
one that I
committees and how we
did
can work together at the North
with
Dakota border.
Marco
Similar,
Rubio.
although very different, Michigan and North
They
Dakota.
were all talking about his
So
family and
thankfully,
stuff. This
our
isn't a
regular
family
contact
fucking
to us
reunion.
and to
This
me.
is a confirmation hearing.
But Kristi is a former colleague. You know,
And
we
for
did
those
a
of you
measure
that
of
don't
of a
realize what the date is,
435 from an entire state. It's really
today's
important to have friends.
Friday, January
Together,
17th.
Kristi and I were two out of 435. And if we could get
It's the
Montana,
17th.
Wyoming, and Alaska,
And we're still having fucking confirmation hearings.
take on the fight.
Trump gets inaugurated on the
I
20th.
remember our very first year, my first year, it was not hers, my first year in the House.
That would be what? Monday morning?
Failed to pass a farm bill. And all I can tell you is the least.
And he's going to get
person in America,
sworn in
the Speaker of the House,
as president
Majority Leader the next day,
and not have any of his
I,
picks
doubled up. And,
because it's
and
taken
so
this
we got a lot
fucking
of
long
things done.
to
I
get
say
shit
that
done.
because we are living
But
in
oh,
and Senator Peters,
be late on paying
you
your
used the word
taxes.
strong, stable, and principled. I can't think of
And
better
you'll
words
probably
to
be getting a
describe
fucking
Kristi
phone
Noem than
call
those three words.
or a
I
letter.
would add this.
My
I'm
thing's
not
been
surprised
forever,
that President Trump turned to
forever,
Senator Noem.
that if the federal government
Security of
expects us
Homeland is
to,
the number one priority.
jump when they
Our
say
number one
jump,
priority, our number one constitutional priority as a
they
Congress.
need to realize that all them
Still short of the
motherfuckers
number
work
one
for
priority of the
us.
voters in the last election.
And
It is the number one priority.
it shouldn't
for
take
President
fucking forever to
Donald
get shit
Trump.
done.
So naturally, he would say, who is the toughest, smartest?
Like this motherfucker here, blah, 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 fucking blah. Jesus Christ, let's go.
A ranch woman, mom, grandmother.
I've been live for 14
And when
minutes.
you grow up on a ranch in the prairies
And
of the West,
Kristi Noem hasn't said a word yet.
no one else is
Wasn't
protecting your
asked a
family.
fucking question
You
yet.
do it.
But it's still blah,
As
blah,
President
blah,
Smith
blah, blah,
said,
blah,
as
fucking
Senator
blah.
Peters said, as a leader, as a legislator, as a member of Congress, as a governor.
Yes, we all know Kristi Noem's an amazing woman. Let's go.
Senator Hassan, I might as well have just
My
because I belong
God,
to the club that where
if I could be
belong.
president.
Anyway, it was very, very rich because there's an alliance there that's really, really
This shit would stop.
And so for me, it's just a really
Because if I knew there was some kind of hearing going on and they were in there fucking just yakking on and on and on, I'd walk in there and be like, hey, let's get this shit over with. If you guys want to talk and be all buddy buddy and stuff like you're sitting around in a fucking campfire
From the tribal chairwoman.
then you can do this on your own time. You're on the taxpayer dollar.
Dakota and South Dakota. They don't really care who wins.
Get
the
this
South
shit
Dakota
done.
State football game. But they do care
That Marco
about the
Rubio
confirmation. And Chairwoman
confirmation hearing
McIntyre sent
lasted
me this letter.
5
Standing Rock
fucking
is the home of
hours.
City Hall. In case you were wondering about the credentials of their ability to protect the homeland.
Like, come the fuck on.
I'll just read a few words. On
And
March
I know
3rd,
people think that I'm a huge
Governor
asshole,
Noem
and you
has
know
invited
what?
The Standing Rock Sioux tribe to her table.
So does my
South
wife.
Dakota
That's
State
why
Law
she has me
to enter into
as
a meaningful
asshole in her
conversation.
phone.
That's what I witnessed when she came to your offices.
Because yes, I'm an asshole. Because I say what's on my fucking mind, and I don't give a fuck about anybody's feelings. Nobody's feelings. Don't care.
At the helm of the Department of Homeland Security. These two
Why?
understand the needs and Indian
Because
challenges,
feelings
but
change.
words
I've
like
said that numerous
sovereignty,
times. Feelings
jurisdiction,
change.
and consultation mean to the indigenous people. Speaks volumes to her leadership.
And if the facts
character.
hurt
That's why I
your
wanted to
fucking
respect
feelings,
her and to
I
acknowledge
don't
her.
care. Why? Because facts don't change.
Thank you for those great introductions. The committee has also received several statements in support of Governor Noem's
Oh,
nomination,
Jesus
including a letter
Christ.
from 22 fellow governors, the International Association of Firefighters, and 6 other organizations. Without objection, these letters of support will be made part of the hearing record.
I thought he was going to read all of them.
Thank you for coming and doing those introductions. It's the practice of this committee to swear in witnesses. Governor Noem, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Governor Noem, you are now recognized. for your opening statement.
17 minutes before Kristi Noem says anything.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Chairman Paul, Ranking Member Peters, and the distinguished members of this committee. I'm honored to appear before all of you today as the nominee for the Secretary of Homeland Security. I want to thank President-elect Donald J. Trump for his confidence in my leadership and the people of South Dakota for their fantastic support throughout my time in public service. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude
How
to
old
Senator
is
Kramer.
Kristi Noem?
He has been an invaluable resource to me throughout this
God
process
damn.
and given me much wisdom as well as insight
What
into
is
the
up with
laws
these
and the
women?
procedures of the Senate and this body.
Kristi
I'd also like to
Noem
express my gratitude
is
to Senator Thune, the
53 years
majority leader of
old.
this esteemed body. He's been an advisor to me for many years as well as a friend. And I'm so grateful for the generous support of these two men and their willingness to be here this morning to speak on my behalf and to introduce me to this committee. Now, I'm a wife and a mother and a grandmother, a farmer, rancher, business person. I've served in our state legislature.
Blah,
in
blah,
Congress
blah,
for
blah,
8
blah,
years,
blah.
also
We
a
know all
senator.
about you,
I've spent
ma'am. We
my
can look
entire
you
life
up on
in
the
rural
fucking
America.
internet.
I understand what it
Let's
means to
go.
work hard every single day and to build a better future for your kids and for all of our communities. I come before you today with a deep sense of responsibility and a humility as the nominee to lead the Department of Homeland Security, and also a commitment to the more than 330 Americans who we will work together to help serve and to keep safe and secure in their homes and in their communities. Now, before I proceed, I want to introduce to you my husband, Brian, who's here with me today. He is my constant 24/7 reminder of our dedication to public service and that it's not a solo effort or done alone. He has been a rock by my side, and I appreciate all of his love over so many years. I'm grateful that he's here with me today. Now, securing our homeland is a serious, sacred trust that must be relentlessly pursued and can never be taken for granted. Being safe within our borders here in America is critical, and yet Americans feel less safe than they have felt in decades. For the first time in 30 years, more than 40% of Americans are afraid to walk alone at night within a mile of homes. President-elect Trump is going to change that. I've seen firsthand the challenges and the opportunities facing our great nation. In the 20 years since the Department of Homeland
I tell you right now, if you're afraid to walk alone in the middle of the night where you live, then you live in the fucking wrong area. My wife could walk down the street at 2 in the morning here, be perfectly fine, because we don't live in a ghetto ass area.
State safer, stronger, and freer. I focused every day on making the best decisions, not just for right now, but for generations to come. I've overseen a state budget of over $7 billion and a state employee workforce of more than 13,000, including more than 7,000 that report directly to the governor. I've addressed important issues like cybersecurity, human trafficking, drug interdiction, and also natural disasters, the same challenges that are facing so many of you and the people that you represent back home. I've secured our state and supported the rule of law. And if confirmed as the 8th Secretary, that is the same approach that I will take to leading the Department of Homeland Security. As we face the evolving threats of the 21st century, the mission and the success of
See, my whole thing is it's January 17th. Trump gets sworn in on Monday. Why the hell are we now just doing confirmation hearings? Because what if a vital role like this woman's role that she's going to hopefully be sworn into, she doesn't get approved? Then we got to go through all this again. I'm telling you right now, Trump won't have his full team working for him till Valentine's Day. I hope I'm
and
fucking
a lawful
wrong.
immigration system that is efficient and is effective and that reflects our values. President Trump was elected with a clear mandate. He needs to achieve this mission because 2/3 of Americans support his immigration and border policies, including the majority of Hispanic Americans. I was the first governor to send National Guard troops to our southern border when Texas asked for help and when they were being overwhelmed by an unprecedented border crisis. If confirmed as secretary, I'll ensure that our exceptional, extraordinary Border Patrol agents have all the tools and resources and support that they need to carry out their mission effectively. The same is true of my commitment to the outstanding men and women of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They are responsible for apprehending, detaining, and deporting illegal immigrants. And getting criminal aliens off of our streets and out of the country will help American communities.
Woo, the
be safer
Democrats
again.
don't like
The
that.
bravery and the dedication of the Border Patrol and ICE are unmatched, and I will restore dignity to their work. The rising threat of cyber attacks also demands
Just
our
let
utmost
Border
cooperation
Patrol and ICE
protection.
do their
And our critical
job
infrastructure, from energy grids to financial
and
institutions, is
finish
under
the
constant
wall
attack by foreign
that Biden
adversaries
tried to
and criminal
sell.
actors. As secretary, I will prioritize a comprehensive, whole of government approach to cybersecurity. In fact, in the coming days, we have to plan bigger and think faster and smarter. I fully acknowledge that people in Washington, D.C.
Our
do not have
government
all of the
thinking
answers,
faster?
and therefore I will leverage private-public partnerships.
It ain't
I'll
gonna
advance
happen.
cutting-edge, state-of-the-art technologies to protect our nation's digital landscape. And I will have proven track record of doing this in South Dakota to back me up. I've helped make Dakota State University a global leader in
Okay, here's how you protect against cybersecurity. You don't have everything hooked up to the internet. You make Billy Bob go to his job and actually push the buttons and turn the dials and pull the levers at his job instead of his job being hooked to a computer via the internet, and he can sit at a fucking computer and push buttons. That's how you protect vital infrastructure from a cyber attack. Period.
And we revamped our law enforcement training to provide the first ever state-led, tribal-focused law enforcement training academy. I'm very proud of the work that we've done in cooperation with our tribes to help make their communities more safe. And we must remain vigilant against terrorism and against others who wish to do us harm to our country and to our great people. I'll ensure that Our intelligence and our law enforcement agencies are working together hand in hand, that they're fully equipped to detect, prevent, and respond to threats from radical ideologies and foreign adversaries. This requires resources, coordination, and collaboration across all levels of government. And once again, I will seek your wisdom and I will seek your input into the months ahead. For the sake of the people that we both represent, we have to get this right. Now, I recognize that Homeland Security isn't just about prevention, but it's also about resilience. When disasters strike, as we know they will, the Department of Homeland Security must be ready to respond swiftly, efficiently.
So I watched the Tim Pool IRL live stream last night. And I'm so glad that he thinks the same way I do. Because with all of us getting older, the chances of us having another Republican, conservative, badass president are going down. Why? The boomers are dying off. Gen Xers are getting older. The next time I go and vote for president, I will be 53 years old. I just turned 50 at the end of November. I'll be 53 years old. And every day, 18-year-olds that are all woke and a bunch of idiots are registering to vote. That listen to these woke ideologies. And also, Tim mentioned about people need to be having kids. Well, I looked it up. I was born in 1974. The average yearly cost for raising a child in 1974 was a little over $3,000. The average cost in 2024 is $25,000. People can't afford to have kids.
Come and go to vote. We'll keep the hearing moving. I want to be clear from the outset that we will not tolerate any disruptions. The Capitol Police have been asked to escort anyone immediately from the room if they disrupt the hearing. This is a standard question, Governor Noem, that we ask of
All right, how about you just don't let these idiots in the room?
to comply with any request or summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to reserve the rest of my time for my questions and go to Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Noem, the DHS Secretary has many competing priorities, as you well know, and you outlined certainly in your opening comments, from our borders to wildfires to cyber attacks. But as you and I discussed at length, and I appreciate you bringing it up in your opening comments as well, we do have a northern border in addition to a southern border. That's absolutely essential that the DHS has the resources necessary at the northern border to carry out its mission, both between ports of entry and all along the border. In fact, we've seen an increase in unauthorized crossings in recent years at the northern border. So my question for you is, if confirmed, do you commit to ensuring along with the southern border that the northern border is sufficiently staffed to maintain its security and robust trade between the U.S. and its neighbors, including at the Gordie Howe International Bridge in my home state of Michigan, have the resources they need to facilitate trade while keeping Americans safe?
Yes, Senator Peters, you and I talked about this in your office and also with Senator Slotkin as well, how important it is to continue to remain focused.
Now, I have said that when they make it harder to cross the southern border, that people are going to come in through the northern border because there's thousands of miles of northern border that are wide open. Just wide open. Nobody up there, nobody around for hundreds of miles. So say you wanted to bring something bad through the northern border, you can freaking do it.
Staffed appropriately.
Very good. And as we discussed, the department is diligently working to stand up the Northern Border Mission Center at Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan. following the authorization and funding that I was able to secure in the last Congress. This center is critical to supporting the department's northern border security missions and addressing evolving threats. So quick question, if confirmed, do you commit to working with me to fully build out the Northern Border Mission Center?
Yes, Senator, we will look forward, and I look forward to working with you to ensure that is a priority and that it's adequately resourced, and working with Congress and senators to make sure that we have what we need to make sure that mission for that base is fully fulfilled.
You guys see that strip of land where there's no
we
trees?
witnessed two incidents that reminded us that
That's the
terrorism
northern
and
border.
extremism remain serious threats to all Americans.
How do you
Both
protect
DHS and
that?
the FBI have consistently said that the most persistent threat to the homeland is from U.S.-based individuals or small groups radicalized by a variety of ideologies, from white supremacy to ISIS to Al-Qaeda. We must certainly continue to focus on people who are radicalized here in the United States with the intent of terrorizing our communities. So my question for you, ma'am, is how do you plan to address this threat of U.S.-based terrorists?
Senator, this is a grave concern for our country, as we all agree that the number one threat to our homeland security is the southern border. In fact, since Joe Biden has been president, we've seen 382 individuals that have come over that border that are on the terrorist watch list. Behind me have the governor of Louisiana with me, and he and his state and people in this country went through a horrific event on New Year's Day. And one that we never want to repeat it again. But this governor behind me is concerned also about an upcoming event, which is the Super Bowl coming shortly, which we need to do all that we can to work together, that he has the reassurance that the federal government, that the Department of Homeland Security is prepared to help him protect that event and to keep people safe while they are there. Those 382 terrorists or known terrorists that have come over our border, we don't know necessarily where they are because of what has been happening under Joe Biden's policies. Now, President Trump
Exactly.
obviously won the last election with a clear mandate, and that mandate is for the American people to secure that border. But also, we need to focus on domestic terrorism and homegrown terrorism, which you just referenced in your question. Homegrown terrorism is on the rise. We see more and more incidents of people that are U.S. citizens that have become radicalized, and knowing when people are leaving the country and coming back and changes to their behaviors and what their actions are is critically important. So the resources that the Department of Homeland Security has needs to be utilized.
That's why when you see something, say something. But everybody's so scared of being labeled a Karen or, these red flag laws. Everybody's so scared. But safety comes at a price. I know people don't want to have to pay that price. But safety comes at a price.
So that we can address the threats that we currently face and make sure we don't have any repeats of the day that we saw just starting this year on New Year's Day.
In the last 2 years.
All right. Well, my whole thing about New Year's Day and that truck and stuff, why was that truck able to get onto that road, that street where everybody was walking down? We have K rails, which if you people don't know what a K rail is, that's a big, like 3.5 foot tall concrete barricades. We have K rails everywhere. If I wanted a K rail, I can go buy one right now. That whole road, except for a little walkthrough on each end, like a little 3 foot wide walkthrough, should have had a K rail across it on every entrance. But that doesn't look nice. But does a bunch of people being ran over by a truck look nice?
Systems to protect them in the future, recognizing the vulnerabilities that they have. This has gotten far off mission. They're using their resources in ways that was never intended. The misinformation and disinformation that they have stuck their toe into and meddled with should be refocused back onto what their job is, and that is to support critical infrastructure and to help our local and small businesses and critical infrastructure at the state level to have the resources and be prepared for those cyber attacks that they will face. You know, Salt Typhoon was a campaign of espionage by the PRC in China against our telecoms, where large amount of data was stolen and taken, and people's private information was taken as well. And we've also seen China and the PRC go after.
All right. Well, how about Wells Fargo Bank? And how many times they've been in the news with a data breach? The reason why you have a data breach is because a lot of big companies pay some lowly schmuck to be their IT guy. And nobody wants to do a multi-point verification. Hell, the Linus Tech Tips YouTube channel, which is a humongous, like 14 million subscriber YouTube tech channel, they got hacked because people got lax in the security. When you get lax in your security, that's when shit happens.
Shooting, I'd ask people, I said, at all my events, I say, raise your hand if you think the acting director of the Secret Service is going to tell us what happened. Now, one person. I said, what about Secretary of Marcus? You know, he's running HHS. What do you think? Or Homeland Security. What do you think? I said, how about Christopher Wray? You know, head of the FBI? Not one person. Can you just talk about the importance of transparency and accountability in government?
How about
you're going to bring that to
holding people accountable
Yeah, Senator Scott,
for
thank you for
doing
that
the
question, because
jobs
that's what I have found across the country as well.
that they're either elected to or appointed to?
Is that people don't trust the
Hold
federal
them
government.
fucking
They don't
accountable.
trust our leadership and this current administration that's in the White House right
And I mean accountable by, if you fuck up, you get in trouble. If you continually fuck up, you're out on the street, just like at anybody's job. If my wife fucks up enough at her job, she doesn't have said job anymore. And I'm sure that goes for everybody watching. But how do we allow all these elected officials just to constantly drop the ball and fuck up, and they still have their job?
off mission when they should be focused on making sure we're addressing national security events with the protocols that are necessary and protecting the individuals that they're charged with and getting that skill set and training that are necessary. That's been compromised by not having enough people there and being adequately staffed and resourced. But frankly, the leadership hasn't been honest about talking about it. We saw this with the drones over New Jersey as well. The federal government not answering the questions from the public. And when they finally got a straight answer out of President Trump, they felt reassured that somebody recognized that this was something they were questioning
Or
and that they
the
deserved answers.
Chinese air
My goal
balloon
and my mission is to build trust.
that floated all the way
We
across
will
the country.
undertake a large job and a large duty that we have to fulfill, that the American people expect us to do by securing our border, to make sure that our nation is a nation with borders, or we're no nation at all. And that we are making sure that those criminal actors that are perpetuating violence in our communities and in our cities and towns and states.
You know
are
what
removed
pisses
from
me
this
off the
country, that there's
most?
consequences for breaking
When
the
somebody
laws of
asks the
country.
president a
There has to
question
be consequences, because when Americans break
and
the law,
they just turn
there's
around and walk
consequences.
off,
And why would we ever allow
or
someone to come in
the
from
press
another country
secretary
and not
just turns
allow
around and
them
walks
and
off?
not have consequences, or
It's like,
allow them
I
to
asked you a
continue to go
fucking
forward and
question. Answer the question.
rape and murders and other.
If you
breaking
don't know
of
the
laws
answer, say
that
I don't have the
endanger our
answer,
society.
but I'll get
We've had
back to
over
you on it.
13,000
I'll
murders that are
circle
loose in this
back.
country that have come over that border. We've had almost 16,000 rapists and sexual assault perpetuators that are loose in this country right now. 425,000 plus
But
people
they just
have
want a
criminal
better
convictions
life.
that are here illegally in this country, that our current administration is doing nothing to round them up and get them out of our country. We
I
will get
remember
them out
all these
immediately,
bleeding
and that will
heart
be the priority.
liberals.
And that is one of the
They
reasons
just want a
that
better
today
life.
the American people have lost their trust. President Trump will build it back and know that their federal government is accountable to them and is working to put America first again.
So Joe Biden completely opened our southern border and dismantled our entire immigration system. As a former governor, I know that when the federal government policies are broken and failing Americans, you see the impacts in your state, just like I did when I was a governor. And you take the steps necessary to protect the families in your state. I know you've done that. One thing you did is you talked about before you sent troops, our National Guard to the southern border. Can you talk more about how Biden's open border policy has affected your state and communities and the role your state resources placed in helping secure the border?
You know, we certainly have seen the effects in South Dakota that many of your states did. And I would say every state has seen the effects of an open border and the policies that have been under the Biden administration. We saw increased crime, but we also
You know, the only thing that I like that all of these southern states have been doing with all these illegals coming in is shipping them and flying them to every other fucking state. Because 10 years ago, we still had all these illegals coming across, but it was only a border state problem. And now that Governor of Texas, Governor of Arizona, Governor of Florida is shipping these people everywhere, oh, now it's what everybody's talking about. Because now it's just not a southern state problem, it's an every fucking state problem.
threats that they would see, and that they are trained specifically to interact with other agencies. The National Guard is used to falling in with other agencies and cooperating with them and could do that seamlessly. And their families and their communities are advised to them being deployed. So we have in South Dakota deployed our National Guard to the southern border 8 different times. 2 of them were federal deployments that the Biden administration sent them down there. One was to send our Lakota helicopters, which were used for surveillance and the drug interdiction that was going on down there. But 6 other times I sent them under state activation to partner with Texas and other states in securing our southern border. They did security operations. They also did building of the wall and partnered with Texas, recognizing the failures of the federal government. The failures of the federal government are significant, and we've seen our families and communities devastated by those effects, by the drug epidemic, by the trafficking that's going on, the increased crime. And we recognize just because the federal government wasn't doing their job, we could not fail our state. And I needed to protect the people of South Dakota, and the people of South Dakota were overwhelmingly supportive of these deployments and very proud of our National Guard.
When I was governor of Florida, there was a terrorist attack in Paris by Syrian refugees. So President.
All right, if Biden's so, wanting to help out at the border, then why did Biden sue the state of Arizona because we put in temporary barricades?
On planes into this country, completely unvetted, right? They've never given our governors any information. So would you change that?
Yes, the communication between states and the federal government has been absolutely broken. And that's what I love about this committee is you do have governors sitting.
You know what I would do if I was the governor of a state and the freaking president flew in a plane full of illegals? As soon as that plane touched down, they'd be surrounded with police officers and a fuel tanker. They wouldn't be allowed to offload in my state. I'd fuel them back up and tell them, you're not welcome here. But no state has a governor with that big of balls. Arizona used to. When old Obama came here, our governor shook her finger right in the president's face and made him get back on the fucking plane.
From this administration, that vetting process was being done, that we knew where they're going. In fact, they kept us in the dark and didn't communicate to us even what states and where those refugees were being placed. So that is something that we need to change. When we have programs that fall under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security, there needs to be communication, especially with the governors, so that we can coordinate to ensure that it's the right thing for that state.
Thank you.
Senator Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Governor Noem. Really appreciate you being here. Welcome to your family as well.
Thank you.
And families do share in this kind of public service, and we appreciate them very much. As we discussed at our meeting last month, As a former governor, I appreciate the important responsibilities that governors have to ensure the safety and security of their communities, including by managing public safety and in emergency agencies. And I will say that in many ways, I agree with some of the things that Senator Scott just said about improving communication between the Department of Homeland Security and governors around who is being sent to states. It's a critical issue and something that I was frustrated by when I was governor. So I look forward to hearing more today about your priorities, if confirmed, about how you.
Here's the
confirmed, about
question.
how your experience as governor would help.
Does the
you
governor
in
of every
Department Homeland
state
Security.
have the cell phone
Let
number
me just start by following up with a
of the
question,
person that is
that
in
Senator
charge?
Peters had also touched on.
You know, like does
We
the
have
governor of
recently in New
Arizona,
Hampshire seen
if
a
this
dramatic
Kristi Noem
increase
gets
in
in,
unauthorized border crossings at
will
the
she
northern
have the
border.
phone number
And when I was
to,
at the northern
you
border
know,
recently,
something's
law
going on,
enforcement
pick
told
up the
me
phone
the
and
need
ask
for
her a
more
question?
personnel and resources,
Or will she have to
increased
call
allow
the
cell phone
fucking
coverage
office
in a lot of
and
the
leave a
urban stretch of
voicemail?
our northern border? I've worked with Senator Kramer on bipartisan legislation to strengthen our northern border strategy.
We've had cell
because
phones
it's
for
clear
how
more
long
support
now?
is needed. So, Governor, if you're confirmed, would you deploy additional full-time personnel and upgrade equipment along the northern border?
You know, Senator, I enjoyed our meeting that we had and you identifying the northern border issues that are going on, the lack of security and the lack of technologies that you really need to cover some of the landscapes that are there. Very different than the southern border, some just as equally challenging, but all need to be addressed. So I definitely will be working with you to ensure that our northern border is adequately resourced as well. And we do have to have the resources in order to be successful.
Right.
That's something I want to work with Congress, with the Senate and the House.
It is 2025. For $500, I can go buy a drone that can attach to my phone and stream 4K video to my phone. Why aren't we using this at these borders? Because you can have a couple dudes flying drones checking on a whole lot more area than, you know, half a dozen guys on foot or in a truck.
Relationship. So I think it's important that we're smart in the deployment of technology. We don't want to impede that flow of economy.
Exactly,
People,
technology.
lawful, but we do want to make sure that we have the resources we need.
But
I want to turn to the southern border now.
technology
The southern
won't
border,
ever
we need
work
significant technological investments to support law
when
enforcement personnel in their efforts to catch fentanyl smugglers, to stop human traffickers.
70% of our
seize
elected
the cash
officials
and illegal guns that criminals traffic
are 70
south
plus years
to the
old.
cartels. And we talked about this a little bit. There's bipartisan support for these investments, and I've worked with colleagues, including Senators Langford and Cornyn, on legislation around these issues. Governor Noem, could you identify specific technological investments that you would make at the southern border? And are you willing to work with me on increasing southbound inspections if you're confirmed?
Yes, certainly, Senator. You've heard President Trump talk about the need to build a wall, and the wall and infrastructure is critically important, but also at our 382 legal ports of entry, we need to have technologies so that flow can happen north and south, and it can happen in a legal manner to ensure that our commerce can continue to operate and that we can continue to make sure that we're also secure. I think de minimis shipments are a concern, and the need to look at those and how traffickers and fentanyl distributors are using that. I think we also need to use scanners, surveillance operations. There's new technologies out there to cooperate with satellites in some area where the topography does not necessarily facilitate having actual infrastructure. And then also the ability to make sure that we're utilizing that technology that allows us to know what is going south that might be.
When she was talking about the topography, I've been down to the southern border here, and we went down the road right next to the border wall. And I frankly didn't know if we were going to be able to make it back up this hill. And we were in a V8 powered SUV. I didn't know if we were going to be able to make it back to the top. That hill was like that steep. There's no way you could build a border wall on that.
including many students and teachers in New Hampshire. This cyber attack on Power School comes as schools and local governments across the country have seen a surge in cyber attacks on their systems. And when a small school of maybe a couple of thousand system, maybe 1,000 students or so has to pay $2 million in ransom. I want you to think about what that does to one of our small communities, right? So Governor Noem, if you're confirmed, how will you empower the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency to improve the cybersecurity of state and local governments in the United States?
Well, thank you, Senator. If I am confirmed and have the opportunity to serve as secretary of this department, I'll be following the Constitution and the rule of law, and then getting these departments back on mission to why they were created and why they are existing. What
Oh,
CISA should be doing
we have
is
some
helping
breaking
those-
news from Benny Johnson. Trump to announce Sean Curran as Secret Service Director. If you don't have any idea who Sean Curran is, let me show you. That's Sean Curran.
Discuss this program, and I know you as governor had some reservations about the structure of the program, but if confirmed, will you commit to working with Congress to adjust it? I'd love your input about what gave you pause as governor. I think there were only 2 governors who didn't
Correct.
participate in the program. And I hope that as we work on the concerns you have, you'd work with me to adjust and reauthorize the program.
Yes, all grants within the department will be evaluated when I come in and be looked at to see what we can do to make sure that they're actually fulfilling the mission to which they were established. What I would say about the cybersecurity grants in South Dakota, when I came in as governor, one of my main priorities was to bring the next industry into the state.
Right.
And I determined that that would be technology and cybersecurity. In fact, we have Dakota State University in our state, which is a cybersecurity national leader in training those cyber warriors that we need to protect us and keep us safe. I've since then
And here's something, if you haven't heard, I'm going to tell you. 145 Democrats vote against bill to deport illegal immigrants convicted of sex crimes. Yeah. That's our elected officials that are paid for by our taxpayer dollars, everyone.
costs of it would have been much more than what it would have been able to facilitate at the local level.
My whole
Our
thing
state
is,
already
why?
proactively
Why
helping
did they vote
these
against it?
individuals that needed
Why do
the
the Democrats
resources
want to
secure their system.
destroy
Well, I
our great
appreciate
country?
I'm way over time. There were very few requirements purposely in that grant program other than to make sure the money was being spent the way we authorized. But let's continue to talk
We
about
will.
that. Thank you.
Senator Holling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Noem, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm delighted to see you here. I do notice the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee is over your
He
shoulder
is.
there. I'd have to question your judgment about
I-
who your friends are based on that. The great
Jeez.
chairman
Oh,
of Missouri. It's fantastic to have you here. You know, the
jokes.
Department of Homeland
Yuck,
Security
yuck,
is
yuck,
not
yuck.
particularly old, but you already have what I hope will soon be the distinction of succeeding the worst secretary in the history of the Department of Homeland Security. Alejandro Mayorkas has been an absolute disgrace to that department and frankly to this country. And I'm delighted to see you willing to step up and serve. Let me just ask you something. I repeatedly asked your predecessor when he sat where you're sitting whether the southern border was secure. And he repeatedly told me under oath, it is secure, Senator. And he repeatedly said under oath, our policies are working, Senator, meaning the Biden administration policies that, of course, gave us this devastating open border. So let me just ask you, is the southern border secure as we find it today?
Senator, no, the southern border is not secure today, but in just 3 days, we will have a new president in this country, President Donald J. Trump, and he will secure our border.
That is refreshing candor. I'm glad to hear it. Let me ask you about a young man from my state. This is Travis Wolf, who's 12 years old when he was killed just over a year ago by an illegal migrant who mowed him down, and I choose my words carefully, mowed him down in a motor vehicle, hit him head on, doing 75 and a 40, killed him. Others were severely injured. Just yesterday, a witness sitting where you are sitting today told this committee that migrant crime is, and I quote, not an actual concern. Not an actual concern. In a hearing before this committee advising us to drop the Lake and Riley Act and not focus on migrant crime. You know, in my state, with the death of people like Travis Wolf and Officer David Lee, who was assaulted and killed in St. Louis, and officers in Kansas City who've been assaulted by illegal migrants, and others who have been carjacked and stabbed. Would you agree with me that migrant crime sure as heck is an actual concern and that you intend to do something about it?
Yes, Senator, absolutely. And I'm so sorry about Travis and my prayers go out to his family. I can't even imagine what that is like. And thank you for telling his story, because there's so many families in this country that have that same story. And they don't understand why the federal government is allowing people to come into this country illegally and then perpetuate crimes against their people and then give them resources and shelter and food and debit cards to go take care of their families when they go to work every single day to make sure that they're providing for their families and are held accountable to when they break our laws.
Let me ask you this. Will you work with President Trump to reinstate the Remain in Mexico program that the president had in place in his first term, which does so much to ensure that those who would seek to abuse our asylum system are not allowed into the country, and those who have legitimate asylum claims, their claims are processed in due order and in due course, but they wait in Mexico until those claims are fully processed? Will you work to reinstate that program?
Yes, Senator, the president and I have talked extensively about this and will 100% partner with him to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy and make sure that it's in place.
Fantastic. I think Travis might be alive today if that policy had been in place. Let me ask you about CBP One, the phone app that I've called Concierge Service for Illegal Immigrants. I'm sure you're familiar with it. This was the Biden administration's effort to allow asylum seekers to apply ahead of time using their phones, but not actually to provide any evidence that they needed asylum. There was a newspaper report, a press report that said the only problem with the app is it never asks users, are you seeking asylum? They don't ask for any asylum evidence. They simply release these so-called asylum seekers who use the app into the country on parole. Sometimes they're never given a hearing. The Inspector General actually did a report, a full investigation report on CBP One, and found that frequently users of this app were claiming the same addresses in the United States as their intended destination, even though they didn't know each other, they weren't family connections. In other words, it has been completely abused. And the idea that the federal government would pay for this kind of concierge service for illegals, I think is outrageous. Will you end the use of the CBP One app?
Yes, Senator, if confirmed, and I have the opportunity to be secretary on day one, CBP One will be shut down. There's data and information in there that we will preserve so that we can ensure we know who's coming into this country and who's already here that we need to go find, but also we make sure that there's another program, CHNV, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, where our federal government actually paid to fly people into this country directly from other countries without any vetting or knowing who they are. So there's several of these programs that need to be eliminated, and we need to ensure that we're following legal immigration laws.
I'm glad you just mentioned CHNV. This is this is a mass parole program. Of course, as you know, our law allows parole in only very limited circumstances. There are two circumstances, and it requires case-by-case evaluation. The present administration, soon to be gone, has granted mass parole in direct defiance of the law, not case-by-case evaluation. The CHNV program is one of those instances. Will you put a stop to this abuse of our parole law and our asylum system?
Yes, we will go back to case-by-case evaluation of these parole cases and ensure that we have more resources, if you will partner with us to make sure that our legal immigration system is fully utilized, that we have more judges, more immigration courts, so that we can process people legally and make sure that they are going through that process rather than like Joe Biden has done, use this as an excuse to allow people to come into our country with no consequences.
Let me ask you about another low light, not a highlight, but a low light of this last administration and DHS. Your predecessor, the current Secretary of DHS, established a disinformation board using taxpayer resources to police speech on the internet and elsewhere, to tag American citizens' viewpoints as either legitimate or not legitimate, and use the power of the state to censor them, including having them removed and perhaps penalized. This has got to be the darkest chapter, I think, in DHS's short history. He eventually withdrew the board under intense criticism, but has never fully repudiated it and never promised not to do it again. Will you pledge to us here today that under your leadership, there will never be a disinformation board or anything like it at DHS, and you will be a champion for the free speech and First Amendment rights of all Americans.
Senator, there will not be a board such as that under my leadership at the Department of Homeland Security.
Fantastic. Let me ask you in my remaining seconds, just one more thing about the Secret Service. You've mentioned this, and I'm so glad that you did. This committee, and it has been bipartisan, this committee has done bipartisan work on the attempted assassinations, or the assassination attempts, I should perhaps say, of the former president, soon to be the future president, soon to be the president, President Trump. We were stymied at every turn. And I should use the present tense. We are currently being stymied at every turn by the current Secret Service leadership and, frankly, by the leadership of DHS, who have refused to turn over documents, who refused to make people available interviews. We finally had to pass my own law in this committee, which we unanimously adopted, a law, a statute, mind you, which would require DHS and Secret Service to turn over relevant information to us about the assassination attempts. It's unbelievable. When you come to office, to this office, I hope very soon, will you pledge to us that you will open the books on all of the facts associated and around these assassination attempts, that you will make available to us and to the public, most importantly, all the facts, so that we can ensure that this never happens again and that the needed reforms in the Secret Service are put into effect?
Senator, if I am the Secretary of Homeland Security, I will certainly work with you to build transparency and make sure the facts are shared with you and your committee. I know that you've been very
No. She doesn't need to use if.
The department, and I want to thank those of you that have.
She needs to use when.
Report that was put together on these.
I am Director of Homeland Security.
Attempts. I know it was a
Not
bipartisan
if,
report.
when.
Investigation that this committee conducted, and I appreciate you focusing on that, and I will work with you to get the information so that you have the truth of really what happened there and the failures so they can be fixed.
Thank you. That's a great place to end. And a high note, as I see my friend Senator Blumenthal, who did fantastic work on this effort, and it will be an incredible incredible new day, and incredibly refreshing to have a DHS secretary who will tell us the truth, who will be honest with us about the facts, honest with the American people, and who will enforce our law. And I know you'll do that, Governor Noem. I look forward to supporting your nomination. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Senator Johnson. Welcome, Governor Noem, and thank you for being here. Thank you for visiting with me, and thank you to your family for their service as well. Let me begin on a high note, thanking Senator Hawley for his leadership on the effort that I led with him to essentially get some basic facts out of the Secret Service when we were investigating, Senator Johnson and I, as leaders of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, helping to lead it with the chairman and ranking member here. And I'm hoping that you've read our report and that you will agree to begin implementing its recommendations, which call for major reforms, in my view, a house cleaning top to bottom in the Secret Service, and greater transparency with this committee and with the American public.
Yes, sir. I will certainly work with you to do that and to work to make sure that we have that transparency and the committee has the information that it needs to do due diligence of its oversight.
Our investigation is continuing.
Yep.
Senator Johnson and I have discussed it, and we will be making more requests to pursue the fact-finding that is so important. I want to ask you about disaster relief. California is on fire. The fires raging there are going to leave destruction and devastation that is heartbreaking. I am really disappointed with some of the statements that President-elect Trump has made. For example, saying that, quote, we won't give him, referring to Governor Newsom, money to put out all his fires. And if we don't give him money to put out fires, he's got a problem. The specter is there of potential discrimination based on politics, withholding money from California or other states. It's not an unfounded fear. In the last administration, there were public reports about President Trump withholding money from the state of Washington because of his disagreements with Governor Inslee. Connecticut, like the rest of the nation.
Well,
suffers from
listen.
natural disasters, most recently.
Listen,
the
Linda,
cost
listen.
by
If you're asking for money, then you don't need to be arguing with the person that you're asking the money from. Period. But yet, these Democrat state governors don't realize that.
Well, Senator, leadership has consequences. And looking at the tragedy that's happening
I
in
want to
California
ask
is
yes or no, with all due respect. It's an
what's
easy.
All right, so he got to talk for 2 minutes, but she don't get to talk.
my leadership at the Department of Homeland Security, there will be no political bias to how disaster relief is delivered to the American
So if
people.
President Trump were to say to you, we're going to withhold money from Connecticut or Michigan or any of the states, Iowa, because we don't like the governor or we don't like the politics of the state, you would stand up to him and say, Mr. President, we need to allocate that money.
Well, Senator, in 3 days, President Trump will take an oath to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law in this country, and he will do that, and I'll be glad to have him back.
And I assume
I
that's
don't
a
speak
yes.
to hypotheticals, which is what you're asking me to do. But what I will tell you is that as secretary, I will do the same. I will deliver the programs as the
Well, it's more
laws
than a
dictate.
hypothetical, with all due respect. And I apologize for interrupting you, but my time is limited, as you know, as a veteran of these hearings. It's more than a hypothetical. It's based on experience with President Trump withholding money from Washington State and elsewhere. I need to know from you, will you stand up to the president and say, no, the Constitution and the Impoundment Act requires us, for example, to allocate the $100 billion that we have just appropriated in the last session to states like Connecticut, $3 million, Texas, $10 million, almost every one of the states represented here. Will you say no to the president if he withholds that money?
Sir, I don't know about the scenarios that you're referencing with President Trump, but what I will tell you is that if given the chance to be Secretary of Homeland Security, that I will deliver the programs according to the law and that it will be done with no political bias. And if the programs change, or if you decide to change the rule of law, then I will follow that while
So you
adhering to the
pledge to
Constitution.
allocate and distribute that $100 billion.
According to how the program is written, with no political bias.
Thank
Every
you.
American deserves to be there and have disaster relief the same as their neighbors.
Basically following the law.
Yes.
Let me ask you, Senator Peters asked you about homegrown terrorists. The New Orleans tragedy was the result of a homegrown terrorist born in this country, radicalized by ISIS. And it reflects the reason why the intelligence community, the FBI, almost all of our law enforcement has said repeatedly, domestic violent extremism.
How
is the
much does
most
it cost
real
to
and
rent a
persistent
K-rail?
threat to our security? That terrorist was radicalized by ISIS. The investigation is underway. We don't know all the facts, but we do know that he was a military veteran and ISIS was responsible for radicalizing him. Shouldn't we focus on ISIS as a threat to this country's security?
How long is a typical
Senator,
K-rail?
certainly we should be focused on all threats to this nation's security. That's the mission of the Department of Homeland Security, and homegrown terrorism is growing. We have more and more incidences. The tragedy we saw and the terrorist attack.
All
in
right.
New
What do you
Orleans
do to
was-
combat it?
The
What do you do to
cost of
stop
renting a K-rail
ISIS and other
is $20 to $30 a foot.
extremist organizations from
The typical
radicalizing
K-rail is
people in
20
this country?
feet long.
Well, certainly, Senator, I'll continue to work with the administration and our partners and the Department of Defense, the intelligence agencies, also within
A few
Secretary of
$1,000s
State
spent
and
on
many other
renting
branches and cabinet
K-rails
officials to make sure we're bringing all resources
could have
to
made
bear
sure
to
that the
identify
people that were
and to
in
stop
New
these types of
Orleans
terrorist activities. What I would say
were safe.
is the cybersecurity and intelligence elements that we have within the Department of Homeland Security have been incredibly siloed. They have not communicated with other intelligence agencies like they should.
Is the mayor of New Orleans a
INA has
Democrat
some
or a
interaction,
Republican?
But not enough. And we also need to have some
Oh,
interaction with the FBI, CIA. to make sure that we're
oh,
working
that
together to
explains
fight and stop these
everything.
types of threats and identify.
I just asked if the mayor of New Orleans was a Democrat or Republican. Democrat. So I'm wondering if this LaPoya woman, that's the mayor of New Orleans, left the barriers open so she could get even bad press is still press on New Orleans. Get people talking about it.
Continuing service, the service that you had as a member of Congress, the service that you have displayed as a governor of the great state of South Dakota, our neighbor to the northwest, and for being willing to step up and take on this immense responsibility. So thank you so very much. We had such a good discussion when you came to my office in the last several weeks, and we talked about the importance of securing our border and fixing our broken immigration system. And I'd like to start today by sharing a story about one of my constituents from Council Bluffs, Iowa. And what we have seen through this broken border is tragedy that strikes so many families across
Oh,
the
we're
United
doing a
States.
show and tell
So
now.
very similar to the story that was shared by my colleague from Missouri with his constituent, Mr. Wolf. I have a young woman by the name of Sarah Root who encountered tragedy on January 31st, 9 years ago. So Sarah Root was struck and killed by an illegal immigrant who was drunk driving. He was driving at 3 times the legal limit of alcohol. And Sarah's killer was bonded out before the Roots laid her to rest. He fled the
So,
country
are
and
we going to
has
ban
not been
vehicles now?
seen or heard from
Because
since.
we got the vehicle
The Root
tragedy
family
in New
has not
Orleans,
seen
this
justice.
vehicle tragedy, the other one
Mr.
where
Governor,
it
how
was
do you
a
plan to
illegal that
prioritize
was
the detention
using
and
a vehicle.
deportation of illegal
So, are we
immigrants
just going to
like
ban
Sarah's killer?
vehicles?
Senator,
Because it
thank you for
seems like
telling
to me,
Sarah's story. I
this
remember when it
last year,
happened because it was so close to home and so devastating for
vehicles
her,
have
her
taken a
family, and the
lot more
entire state of
lives
Iowa
than
and our
pew
country.
pews.
President Trump is focused on making sure that these types of situations don't happen again, that we don't continue to lose our children and our family members to illegal immigrants that come in and perpetuate crime and with no accountability, and then are released with no consequences. So the number one priority of the president is to secure the border
And
deport these
remember,
criminal actors immediately and
147
as soon as possible.
Democrats
They will be
voted
the number one
against
priority to make our
deporting
communities safer, and so that we don't have
illegals.
this kind of situation going forward. In fact, people, I think when they first heard my name being mentioned and nominated for the Department of Homeland Security, maybe thought it was a little bit of a surprise. Like, oh, I didn't think about Kristi doing that job. But I tell people the reason that I asked for it is because I knew it was the president's number one priority. I knew that it would needed to have someone in the position that would do what the president promised the American people, would be strong enough to do it, and follow through to make sure that we're protecting our communities and America, but that also came at it from a perspective of how these families feel. That was a wife and a mom and a grandmother, and would be able to stand up and communicate to the American people what we were doing and why we were, because it's what they asked us to do. I have 3 grandchildren and 1 more on the way, and when I look at little Miss Addie every day, I just think, what kind of a country is she going to grow up in? What kind of a country will we leave her and her brother and a sister? And I don't want them to think that their grandma sat on the sidelines and didn't do all that she could. So I will enforce the Constitution and the law, and I will make sure that when people enact horrific things like this that happened to Sarah and her family, that there will be consequences for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a fellow grandma, I know that you are perfectly positioned to enforce this.
Oh,
I
we're
wanna move
talking about
on
being
to
fellow
another topic
grandmas.
that we visited about in my
Oh
office. I'm
my
the
God.
director and the chair of the Doge Senate caucus. And so we do need greater government efficiency. And I do believe in order to do that, we need less of our employees teleworking and more of those government workers back in the office working for our constituents. And to that end, it ties together then too. We just found out that the Treasury Department had a cyber attack on December 8th from China. And no surprise here, they access servers through work from home software. So it all
Oh,
ties together. We need more
imagine
people back
that.
in the offices.
And yet, I just made a video about the Biden administration extending work from home for 5 years for over 49,000 people.
About it, and they haven't given any authority to those that are enforcing the standards. So we need to enforce the standards that are set forth to make sure the cybersecurity is truly there. But what can DHS do? One, with telework, how do we get the employees back? And then two, how do we make sure that our system?
All right, you want to know how to get the employees back to work? Give them an ultimatum. You either come back to work on Monday morning ready to do your job here, or if you don't show up, I accept your resignation. You're not firing them because they could have just showed back up to work. So by them not showing back up to work, they willfully resigned. And then we need to have somebody go and pick up all the technology that they might have in their possession that the government owns.
To ensure that our systems are safe and secure, one of the things that disturbs me the most is that we don't necessarily even know how some of these espionage attacks that have infiltrated our systems have happened. We don't know how to stop them yet. We don't have the knowledge, and that our departments and intelligence agencies and cybersecurity.
All right, here's an idea. Instead of putting computer hackers in prison, maybe you need to hire them smart son of bitches to work for the federal government, to work in a cybersecurity division. Instead of, oh, we're going to arrest you because you broke the law. No, show up and be like, hey, you got a choice. Go to prison for a long time, or you come work for us and make an honest paycheck.
Just the last month, you need to secure our systems and get it done. So that was a priority for me. And to do that, and we fully funded it and got it done in South Dakota, and it's being implemented today. I look forward to doing that at the federal level to make sure that people's data and information is safe, but also our country is safe from these bad actors that have a plan to take us out.
Well, thank you. My time has expired, but I do want to end on a note that another thing that I do truly appreciate about you and your nomination is that as a governor, you have worked with those local constituencies as well and those local governments. And I know that this will be an incredible strength that will ensure continued success for you within the department. So thank you, Governor, very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Governor, it's good to see you.
Good to see you again,
Thanks for
too.
coming before our committee. I wanted to just ask you, not just about your work, but how it's going to fit into the broader incoming Trump administration. And in particular, I guess I'm uncertain about roles and responsibilities regarding your position and Tom Homan's. I guess I just want to ask you just point blank, like, who's going to be in charge of the border?
Well, the president will be in charge of the border. It's a national security issue, and the president is in charge of this country and has made a promise to the American people, and we will fulfill his agenda.
Well, that was a good answer. It's the answer I would have given as well. But I guess I got confused when Trump made the announcement about Tom Homan. He said, quote, I'm pleased to announce that Tom Homan and said that he's in charge of our nation's borders. So I guess, again, I'd just like to go back to you. How are you going to work with Mr. Homan? What is the division there? I'm trying to get a better sense of who's in charge.
Yeah, Tom Homan is an incredible human being who has over 30 years of experience.
Incredible experience.
Yeah,
I get
at the
that. I'm
border
just trying to
and
think
the
through
insight and wisdom.
decision-making process
Yeah.
when it comes to your work. For instance, will he be giving orders directly to CBP, ICE, USCIS?
Tom Homan has a direct line to the president. He is an advisor to the president, the border czar. I obviously will be, if nominated and confirmed, and put into the position of being the Department of Homeland Security Secretary and responsible for the authorities that we have and the actions that we take.
I say this because I actually want to make sure that we're empowering the next Secretary of Homeland Security.
Yes.
You know, in the legislation that was codified by Congress and moved forward that started this after September 11th, it said, quote, all functions of all offices, employees, and organizational units of the department are vested in the secretary. So I guess the reason why I mentioned this is I've just seen some quotes from Mr. Homan where he said, quote, I'll be making decisions on border security and deportation. He was asked in another interview about the stronger role that he'll play.
All right,
He said, "Absolutely, I'll
who
be making
cares
decisions on how we do
who's
the
in
border."
charge of the border?
So
I'm
I
glad
just
Tom
raised
Homan
this
is in charge of
concern
the border, or
because
hopefully will
not only
be.
is that about the function of our executive branch, but also the capabilities of this committee to be able to properly do our constitutional duties for oversight. The ability for us to be able to have that conversation. We can talk to you, engage with you. That is the direct way. But if he is going to be making decisions, then he should come before this committee as well. And I know that that's something where, as far as I know, his role will be directly at the White House, is not something that will be under the purview directly of this committee. So I just wanted to raise those concerns.
Yeah, Tom and I work very well together and talk and communicate all the time, and we'll be working together on a daily basis when we're in our positions under the new administration. And I would say there's no authorities being planned to be taken away from the department or myself if I'm in the role, and
But
we'll
it sends
continue
some
to
mixed
oversee
signals. You can
CBP.
understand how, people in my home state, maybe around the country, when they hear Mr. Homan saying, I'm making the decisions, when they hear President-elect Trump say he's in charge of our border. So, I urge, that we're going to try to do our best to try to make sure we're empowering the department, empowering the next secretary, because it's where, our laws are invested in our decision making.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Senator, and we'll make sure you have all the information that you need. And Tom working directly with the president and I working directly with the president hope to help you get all that you need to reassured that the authorities will stay the same as they currently are, but we will continue to work to secure that border and make sure that we're working together in that way.
I want to just switch gears about you raised the concerns about terrorism, especially foreign terrorist groups. I guess I just want to ask you, what are the major foreign terrorist groups that are, well, first of all, what are the major foreign terrorist groups that are out there that we're tracking? Which are the ones that are concerns to us in terms of potentially trying to inspire or coordinate an attack upon us? And if you can just give me a sense of what their current capabilities are to try to enact that.
Well, I think we face a lot of threats, Senator, and since I'm not in the role today, I shouldn't get into specifics with you, but I
Well,
think
you can at least get
over
into
years,
specifics about what organizations that are out there. So I
Yes,
just wanted to get a sense of
we
your
have all
knowledge of the
all the
organizations.
traditional terrorist organizations that have always threatened the United States.
Such
But I would
as?
also say, Hamas, ISIS, continuing down that path of those terrorist organizations. But we'll continue to also focus, though, not just on those, but also the cartels, their partnership with the Chinese, and what they are doing. Listen, I've told people for years, for over 30 years, I've worked on national policy, on food policy, on agriculture policy, and I've seen the Chinese agenda to infiltrate our country, control our food supply chain, but also their manipulation of their currency and stealing our IP. And now I believe that this fentanyl crisis that they have flooded our country with is geared, and the purpose of it is to kill our next generation of Americans.
No,
It is to
I don't
control us.
discount the
So when
importance
you
of those.
focus on one or two groups, I think it takes your eye off the ball as to where all the threats could come from. We just spent a significant amount of time talking about homegrown terrorism as well.
Correct. And I'm
about
glad we're having that conversation. But the reason why I mentioned it, I was not trying to quiz you or anything of that nature. It's just that, you know, when the Department of Homeland Security, when their threat assessment for 2025 lists 3 organizations, lists Al-Qaeda, lists ISIS, in particular ISIS Khorasan, and the IRGC and the threat from Iran. I just want to make sure that I get it. You know, you're talking about the importance of the border. We all understand that. We want to work with the incoming administration to try to have an orderly process, one with that. But I just want to make sure that in particular DHS, the primary mission, you know, if we look at the founding legislation, the primary mission, the very first mission is prevent terrorist attacks within the United States and do everything we can to minimize that type of threat. So yes, I do think it's important for us to focus in on 1, 2, or 3, or just wherever these terrorist groups are at. Yes, I know that part of that effort to try to minimize terrorist attacks is through the work that we try to do to secure our borders, all of them, air, sea, and land. But the primary mission still is about preventing terrorism, not just the border security. That's a tool to be able to accomplish that. So I just raise that with you. I want to make sure that the next Homeland Security Secretary has a very detailed knowledge and understanding about the terrorist groups, their capabilities, and is tracking that on a absolute daily basis, and that they understand that is their top mission. With that, I'll yield back to the chairman.
Senator Johnson.
Governor Noem, welcome, and thank you for your willingness to serve. You'll be taking over a massive federal government agency, 240,000 employees. It's probably too massive. I think had I been there back then, I don't think it would have assembled these 22 different agencies in this massive department, but that's what we've got. It's a department that the previous administration, I think, has completely misused. Instead of using Customs and Border Protection to do that, to protect our border and secure it, they've utilized those resources to incentivize a massive influx of illegal immigration. Instead of using the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency to do that, they instead engage in mission creep and
all right, I'm back. I'm gonna
Americans with the misinformation board.
eat because I'm starving.
Disaster relief.
So I don't eat on camera. So
creating greater and greater and increasing levels of moral
enjoy the shit show.
Resulting in higher costs of these disasters. So let's cover each one of those kind of in order. How do you gain control over a massive agency whose resources and personnel have been misused? I mean, how do you root out those individuals who, instead of securing our border, opened it up and facilitated this?
Well, Senator, this has been a big topic of conversation in most of the meetings that I've had with the members of this committee was how do we fix this agency, which the reputation is that it's broken and dysfunctional. I think that was the question I get asked the most is why would you want to head up such a dysfunctional department? And I would say that because the mission of the department is to secure the homeland and our people. It's our biggest vulnerability right now. And we have a president that's not enforcing the law. And I don't believe the law should be unequally applied. Everyone should be subject to our laws, and a nation without laws and without borders is not a nation at all. So I will work by ensuring one of the things that Senator Ernst talked about, people have to show up for work. I think there's going to be a majority of people who don't have their primary mission to secure the homeland, that if they don't want to show up for work, then maybe they're just not truly passionate about protecting America. I think they need to do that, and they need to recognize what their job is. The morale in DHS is very low. I'm going to let people do their jobs. I'm going to remind them what their jobs are. Some of these Border Patrol agents haven't been able to do their jobs for a very long time. They've been processing paperwork and facilitating an invasion when they should be back securing our border, which is why they were recruited and wanted to serve there to begin with. We're going to build partnerships.
Yes, but facilitating an invasion. Let me tell you a story if anybody's watching. So I was watching Oreo Express, live streamed me down at the southern border. He was sitting at the big border wall, and there was a big border wall gate. It was like, dark 30 in the morning. And he sees two people from Mexico come up to the wall right at that gate. Then he sees the Border Patrol van drive up, back up to the gate. The gate opened, the Border Patrol van, our Border Patrol, back through the gate. They opened up the back door of the van to let the people that had walked up to the wall get in, and then they drove off. Basically, our Border Patrol under Biden is being used as a taxi service.
Will you commit to providing the transparency, providing the information, investigate it yourself, but provide this committee, my subcommittee, the information to expose the truth to the American public, but even more importantly, propose a piece of legislation based on our investigation, based on those results, to fix it so that no administration can ever misuse the language of the law to commit that kind of unconstitutional act and violate people's First Amendment rights.
Yeah, Senator, I look forward to working with you on that. And I think what we saw during the COVID pandemic, the actions of CISA, their misinformation and disinformation campaign, the materials they were putting out was shocking. Shocking at what they were doing to decide what was truth, what wasn't, and how they were trying to manipulate the American people. We saw it in elections, and Russia influence as well. And so ensuring that they can't do that in the future under any administration would be a priority, that they stay doing what they're supposed to do and hardening our systems and working with local officials.
Of those fires, but you certainly prevent them from raging into the tragedy that they became, the dozens of people who've lost their lives, the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of property damage. It's not just California, though. I mean, again, that was grotesque mismanagement. That could have been prevented. You can't prevent a hurricane. You can't prevent floods. But you certainly can try and start reducing the moral hazard that we've allowed to explode, quite honestly, by the federal government rushing in immediately, no questions asked. Just tell us how big a check you want.
And nobody's talking about North Carolina
to try and start
or the
reducing
people sleeping in tents
the
in
hazard
freezing
we have
weather,
created in this country
or the
with
fact
federal
that
disaster relief.
several
Senator,
thousand generators
emergencies and disasters are always
have
locally led.
disappeared.
They're led by the local communities and leaders.
But
Communities are much more responsive. And
some
much more
famous
informed
actors'
on how
house
to
was
bring
burnt down,
relief
so
and to
we
get
got to
those
send them a whole
emergency
bunch of money.
services there to meet
People,
the
I'm
need,
telling
and
you
it's
right
state
now,
supported and federally resourced.
if you think I'm joking,
Which means that when we come
do your
in,
own research.
that we're supporting
Type in
what the
Smart
mission is, what those
LA,
emergency operations and plans are
and
that the local
the
city
fact that
and
LA is supposed to be
county and then also the state has
holding
implemented
the
and
Olympics.
do what we can to fulfill the mission of our
And look at the
programs.
map where
One
they're
of the things
supposed to
that
have
FEMA's
all
not
this
doing today
Olympic
that I
stuff
don't think we should be doing
built.
is streamlining communications. We saw this in New Orleans. We saw it in other terrorist
You
attacks
can't.
in the country, and you just referenced it as well.
It's
About
cheaper
the American
to
people not getting
build
the truth, senators not
new
getting the truth and
homes
the transparency that we need. Is that I believe
that
FEMA
are
can
smart
always put
homes
out a blueprint for what a response would be
than
should something
to
terrible happen.
retrofit all these old
And when we
homes.
look at the Secret Service, what happened in Butler, we saw that communication was an issue. That the Secret Service wasn't communicating and balls were getting dropped with local authorities, local law enforcement, and we can put forward a blueprint for how communication can happen and be streamlined between the federal government, the state, and the local entities, so that should something happen, this is how we talk to each other, to make sure that the public has the facts, they're not getting misinformation, which happened with the New Orleans terror attack just recently, but also up in Pennsylvania as well. That blueprint is what we do at the state level that FEMA has failed to do, to proactively educate the public on what everybody's roles are, what we do should something happen, whether it be.
All right, here's what we need to do. We need to have a coach. Like at the whole Butler thing. There should have been a coach listening on the radio. And if people ain't doing their job, he can get on the radio and be like, Becky, I need you to get your fat ass over here. I know you're a DEI hire, but still, move your fat ass over here. Just like how a coach does on a football team or a baseball team. Puts people where they're needed. Instead of nobody being in charge and them running around willy-nilly doing what they want to do. No, we need to have a person monitoring all the communications, doing a huddle prior to the event, and saying, this is what we're going to do.
Not have so much brush and things like that. They're also next to the largest body of water in the world, the Pacific Ocean. So I see these homes all burning on the beach in Malibu, and I'm like, wow, if they just had a generator and a hose, you start sucking the water out of the Pacific Ocean. But you could do more than that. You could pump it and put it in cisterns.
Chicago. We do not permanently put people in apartments or anything of that nature. We are trying to move people away from the border so that way they don't become a burden on these very, very small communities. So I'm very highly concerned, as I told you in our meeting, when the SSP program becomes politicized and to the point where we get lumped in with those programs I don't think are effective and are actually counterproductive. And it ends up depriving our small Arizona borders of these very, very vital funds that they need. So as DHS Secretary, how would you ensure that border communities are not left to respond to and pay for these immigration influxes, the broken border system?
You know who that is, everybody?
To helping really not
That's Ruben Gallego.
To the point where places that are doing things correctly, like Yuma, Arizona, like Pima County, like Cochise County, aren't lumped in with the people that are doing things incorrectly, like New York State and Chicago.
Well, Senator, thank you for the conversation in your office about the program, FEMA, the southern border and the challenges, and then also the difference.
If the election wouldn't have been stolen from Carrie Lake would have been sitting there.
My hope is
and yes, I said the election was stolen from Carrie Lake.
That the federal government would no longer,
because
believe, as President Trump has promised,
everything that I saw posted,
alien invasion. And that your communities in Arizona,
showing that Ruben was winning.
Having people in your small towns and communities.
There'd be thousands of people in the comment section saying, how? Who the hell voted for him? Nobody here in Arizona likes him. Like nobody here in Arizona likes Kitty Hobbs. But miraculously,
so I know we
they
talked
both
extensively
win.
about the SSP program and how you've utilized it. but getting these programs back to what they were intended is important. FEMA is a disaster response agency, and some of the facilities that have been utilizing these types of funds and dollars need to be reevaluated, and to make sure that it's truly doing the service that is upholding our nation's laws.
And certainly I understand reevaluating, especially how some of these states have been using it. In an ideal world, we don't have to have a program like that because we don't have this mass of humanity that's coming towards our borders. But even under the first Trump administration, we actually still needed it also. So this is why my concern is to not get rid of this program, because again, these small communities, I'm talking communities of maybe 10,000 people, maybe only 6 or 7 cops are going to end up really bearing the brunt. We're not a big state. We can't really compensate for those types of losses. These small communities are also largely in, you come from a rural state, counties that are largely rural with a lot of federal land, so they actually don't even have a tax base. So when the broken immigration system,
You guys want to
sends
do your
people to
research
borders, and we
about
end up
that
not
piece of
having to
shit
have enough-
that's
we don't have
talking.
enough money to pay for cops, firefighters, overtime. For,
Type in
hospital
Ruben
assistants.
Gallego
It's that type of program that keeps us
and
keeps
pregnant
these small
wife
communities afloat. So I just want to make sure that
and
again,
go
this does
down
not
that
become,
rabbit hole.
politicized, and that we are kept separate from, I think, the mistakes that other states have taken on. Moving on, in Arizona, we have large parts of the border that run through tribal lands. We have 22 federally recognized
He
tribes.
tried to
Great
seal the
relations,
court
with these
records
tribes. They want to be collaborative partners
and
when it
sued
comes
to keep
border security.
the court
We
records
have some
sealed.
great programs that have worked in the past. For example, the Shadow Wolves program with the Totem Nation. It's a really good
Yeah.
example, collaborative program of tribal.
He's
law
a piece
with
of shit.
DHS to make sure they stop human smuggling and cartels going through the borders. But as DHS Secretary, what is your plan to consult with our border tribes and work together to balance both national security but also their sovereignty?
Yeah. Well, Senator, I believe that my experience as governor and
All right, my whole
relationship
thing about
working with our tribes,
the
is
whole
going to be an
tribal
incredible,
shit.
powerful tool for me to bring to bear at the Department
The
of Homeland
whole
Security
fucking
to work
tribal
on
shit.
how
You just roll down there and say, hey, we're going to put a wall through here. And if you don't like it, tell Kitty, said to Kitty, you got to pick which side you want to be on. Because, yes, you're a tribe. So either we build the wall on the border or we build the wall around your land. So now you become part of Mexico and you deal with all their bullshit. Period. See, but everybody's worried about everybody's fucking feelings. Instead of just walking down there and telling them how it's going to fucking be. And if they don't like it, they can kick fucking rocks or cactus or
their
something.
values and their culture and have their own people be
Oh.
the solution. And then even when it comes to the infrastructure of the wall, that we're respecting that and their landscapes and their land as well. So I look forward to working with you.
All right. How can it be their land if part of it's in the U.S. and part of it's in Mexico? But it's their land. No, bullshit. Sorry if you guys couldn't win any battles against the Americans. Sorry. But you need to assimilate like everybody else has done here. Trust me, every Thanksgiving when I managed my bar, we'd have these Indians come in there just bitching. Fuck this holiday. You guys stole our fucking land. And I'm like, and I just fucking told them several times. I'm like, all right, here's what we will do. We'll give you the land back. But we'll tear down everything that a non-native person built. And we'll take everything that a non-native person has came up with. And I'm like, including that Budweiser beer that you're drinking, those Nike shoes you have on, those Wrangler jeans you have on, that Chevy Silverado that you own sitting in a parking lot. the paved roads you drive on. We'll give you a horse, a teepee, and some fucking moccasins, and see how you like it. And they'd be like, "Oh my God, how dare you say that?" And I'm like, "You're saying it's stolen land, so we'll give you your land back, exactly how it was when we stole it." And they're all like, but, no. And I'm like, you can't have it both fucking ways.
To your state, but to America. 9 years ago today, we met in probably the coldest day I've ever been in my life in Iowa. As you and I were making phone calls and whipping up votes for Republicans in Iowa. My wife, Bridget, who's here, got a chance to meet you. And we left Iowa saying, that person's really going to go far. And here we are 9 years later. You've been an amazing governor, amazing congresswoman, and now you're going to make it even better. Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. So I think sometimes in DC, we tend to complicate things. There is a current Secretary of Homeland Security.
All right.
So why don't we
ask a fucking question, bro?
Job review and compare and contrast him to you. So just if you don't mind, I'll ask you some questions and you can give me an answer. Secretary Mayorkas allowed you said it, just about 400 people on the terror watch list to come into this country illegally. If you were confirmed as Secretary of Homeland Security, how many people on the terror watch list would you allow into this country?
0.
Well, Senator, we would work every single day until we had that number was 0. And if you look at the previous Trump administration over his entire 4 years, in comparison to Joe Biden's number, President Trump, it was 11 that were then removed from the country and face consequences. When you look at the 382 that Joe Biden has let in and the policies continue, is shocking and needs to be changed immediately.
Mayorkas let in about 12,000 murders. How many would you target to let into this country?
My goal every day would be have no murders allowed into this country.
All right, here's what we do. Here's what I would do. You break into this country and you're a terrorist. You go to federal prison and you sit there for life. You don't get let back out. And if you're one of these other ones that come in that are bad for the country, we catch you, we deport you. But we tattoo a fucking number to you. An identification number. That way, if your ass comes back in, straight to prison. Straight to federal prison. And I know the perfect place to build a federal prison for all these people that are coming into the country. Right in Death Valley. And yes, we will air condition it, but we'll set the air conditioner to stay 25 degrees cooler than the outside temperature. So it's technically air conditioned, but just an FYI, the highs during the summer in Death Valley can reach 130. So 25 degrees lower, that's 105. Just like how Sheriff Joe at Tent City here. People bitched about Tent City, and I would just flat out tell them, then don't break the law and get arrested and go to Tent City.
The crime?
Sir, I don't have the specifics to that situation, but certainly that would not be something that I would want to have under my watch.
So just to be clear, Lakem Riley would be alive today.
Yes.
If you had been the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Senator, my hope is that that would be true, yes.
Let's switch to another part of the disgraceful immigration laws that Biden and Mayorkas, who objectively, by the way, has been the worst cabinet member ever in the history of the United States of America. Let's talk about temporary protective status. Temporary being the operative word. Mayorkas and Biden just extended temporary protective status again through 2027. Will you continue to corrupt TPS to allow some sort of open borders agenda? And will you use hot weather of 80 degrees and sunny beaches in El Salvador as a reason why people have to stay in America and not safely return.
Yes, Senator, this program has been abused.
All right. You know, these people are from like El Salvador or whatever. We've got a whole shit ton of big military cargo planes. And what do all those big military cargo planes have? A big ass cargo door on the back of them. And I'm sure we could come up with a whole bunch of parachutes. So we fly over those countries. We kick the door open and scooch everybody out. And if they won't go out on their own, then we put the nose of that big military cargo plane to the sky and dump them out. But these bleeding heart liberals be like, no, but no.
Greatest upgrade in history of the United States of America. But I'm gonna end my time with a startling statistic and actually a challenge to the Democrat Party. When Mayorkas was confirmed, every single Democrat voted to confirm him. And 6 Republicans joined all 50 Democrats.
6 rhinos. Rhinos.
Get to the vote, and hopefully, Chairman, we could do that Monday, because we cannot wait one single day without you being in charge of that department. We should have 100%, 100 senators vote for your confirmation. This will be the litmus test, in my mind, as to whether we have a Democrat Party that's actually serious about doing bipartisan things like securing this country and protecting our citizens. Any Democrat that voted for Mayorkas that does not vote for you should be in front of their voters and removed from office. Thank you for serving, Brian. Thank you for
exactly
being nonsense that you guys have had to put up with over the years. You are going to make an amazing Secretary of Homeland Security.
But a lot of these voters,
Senator Slotkin.
vote these idiots in because they're bleeding heart liberals.
Time in my office, Governor, I'm a former CIA officer, joined right after 9/11 and served 3 tours in Iraq alongside the military. I'm actually the first CIA officer in the Senate. To me, the most important thing, again, as a Democrat from a state that Trump won, right, on the same ballot, we both won. I understand we're going to have different policy opinions. I certainly understand that the president or incoming president has the right to nominate whoever he wants. Those are not the issues for me that I'm going to spend my time on. The ones that I care about the most relate to the mission of the organization when it was founded, protecting the homeland. And I think, to me, it's one thing when there's campaign rhetoric or politicization of things.
You can't protect the homeland with the borders of said homeland
but when it comes
wide
to actually
open.
protecting the country, you do have to be clear and honest about facts and not conflate things. So it's just important to me that I know, particularly since you do have one of the intelligence agencies within the Department of Homeland Security, that you're going to call a spade, right? The most recent acts of domestic terrorism in New Orleans, horrible incident, in Nevada, had nothing to do with migrants, correct? Correct. They were homegrown American citizens. One of them was actually in a very elite military unit. I mean, it's horrible. It's one of the hardest things to catch, the sort of lone wolf, radicalized American citizen. But I want to protect ourselves. Our most recent examples of domestic terrorism.
Because people don't like the Patriot Act. They don't like their communications being monitored. My whole thing is, if you don't like your communications being monitored, then what the fuck are you talking about that you don't want people to know about? Like I've said it numerous times. A married couple should be able to hand their phone at any time to their spouse and be able to go all through said phone. Search history, text messages, everything. And if you're not willing to do that, then why not? Why the hell not? Like, I've got a camera in my window here, and our neighbors had a Christmas party. And that camera is very obvious. It's got a green light on it when it's on. It's on all the time. It's on right now. It shows my front door and my neighbor's front door. Shows the whole walkway between our apartments. Well, somebody was like, "Hey, Brandon, do you know your neighbor's got a camera in the window?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he's probably sitting in his studio, which is right there, watching you and listening to you. Freak out over him having a camera in his window. And she was like, "Well, he's seeing what you guys are doing." And he goes, "Yeah, he sees me come home from work. He sees me go to work. He sees my girlfriend come home from work, go to work. He sees us bring groceries in. He sees us walk the dog." But she was like all freaked out because there's a camera there.
Drive and wanted a better life. Immigration's always been a part of our history and will be a part of our future. We just need to make sure that we're adhering to our nation's laws, which this body has the ability to.
I'm with you.
Continue to change and to put in place.
Again, going back to the fact that you will pledge an oath to the Constitution, not to President Trump, just like every other nominee. President Trump said in November that he is willing to use law enforcement, National Guard, or even active duty military to go after, quote, the threat from within the United States. I don't know exactly what he was talking about. But we have recent examples from your.
Yes, because foreign and domestic. See, these Democrats, these politicians, forget that. That there's a line in that oath that says foreign and domestic.
So I don't.
And that's why we have the National Guard to guard the nation. And if that means that they have to go door to door, asking everybody to show us your papers to prove that you're a U.S. citizen, when there's a big bus parked out on the street, and if you're not a U.S. citizen, your ass gets marched out, put in the bus, right back to Mexico, or whatever shithole country that you're from. Oh, no, people don't want to do that.
Yes, that will be the oath and the pledge that I will be making. And my goal also is to work with you to ensure that we have situations that are always appropriate, that we are well defined.
I just need to know, you're a former governor. You can imagine that if Joe Biden sent in 700 federal law enforcement under Secretary Mayorkas without coordinating with you, I think we can agree.
She hates Trump so much.
That you give the same respect for coordination.
Hey, chick.
Your
TDS is showing as bad as your gray hair.
Sizing of law enforcement and the uniformed military, that's a bad thing. I hope we can agree. Lastly, I will just say, look forward to looking at the northern border, the Gordie Howe Bridge, your help staffing that. We know you aren't right now across many administrations. We haven't met our staffing goals at DHS, and that's a problem. So we really want to make sure that opens on time. But I also want your assurances. You received FEMA assistance from Joe Biden's administration, right? You had historic floods. You asked and requested of the administration, and you were given millions of dollars to help with that. I understand you don't like Gavin Newsom, but can you say in front of the American people that you will open the books to this committee, who does have oversight over FEMA, right? Yep. That you will open the books in a bipartisan way to ensure, whether it's North Carolina or California or anywhere in between, that the American people can know that you are not playing politics with disaster assistance.
Then why hasn't money been sent to North Carolina? Why aren't people still talking about North Carolina instead of talking about California? I'll tell you why. Red state versus blue state. Poor people versus rich people. That's the difference.
Representatives. So I have the benefit of knowing how your qualifications and how strong you are in all these background issues and how hard you work on these things because I've seen it firsthand. So I appreciate you stepping into this because a lot of attention across the country will be focused on this. You know that full well, and you've stepped into it. For Governor Landry, my state and many folks in my state are praying for you and for your state. You've done a great job in leadership at this moment in a very, very tough time for Louisiana. And we don't want to see acts of terrorism anywhere in our country. It's incredibly difficult days for a governor. So thanks for your leadership on that as well. I also have to tell you, Kristi, I've whined to my wife occasionally about the temperature that's coming on Monday. I'm very excited about Trump's inaugural, but we're all going to be sitting outside in about 12 degrees. And I thought just for fun, I would check South Dakota on Monday. It's 1 for a high.
Yeah,
High.
1 for a high.
So I'm going to stop whining about the temperature Monday here in Washington, D.C.
All right, let's see what the temperature is going to be
Not everybody in
here
Oklahoma knows you.
Monday.
The questions that I get from people, though, in Oklahoma, I want to be able to run past you because they want to be able to know the answer to these things.
You want to know
So
what
I'm
the
just gonna
temperature
blitz
is
through a
going
whole
to
bunch of them.
be here Monday? Why, it's going to be freezing in DC and freezing everywhere else. Oh, let's see. It's going to be sunny. 0% chance of rain. The high being 65 and the low being 38. That is why my fat ass lives in the Phoenix, Arizona area. Our coldest day is going to be Tuesday at a high of 62 and a low of 34. I don't understand people that want to live where you've got to put on 5 layers of clothes to go outside.
Critical to knowing who's in our country, but that app will no longer be in use.
Thank you. No other president has ever used the parole authority, just in general, humanitarian parole, to facilitate faster processing of aliens into our country, which leads to the catch and release we've all heard about. So the Oklahomans that I talk to say, are we about to end the abuse of parole and end catch and release? Is that about to stop?
Senator, President Trump's been very clear that he will end catch and release.
Terrific. Folks want to know, will you use your authority with the funds that are given to you by Congress to actually build more wall rather than use the funding that's given to you, as the Biden administration did, to do environmental remediation around the border rather than actual border wall and border structure?
Yeah, Senator, President Trump has been clear that he wants to build the wall.
So do we. So will you use your authority to be able to scan more vehicles? And obviously, we've got to get you the funding to be able to do this, to be able to scan more vehicles.
All right.
Individuals that are carrying.
So I watched a Border Patrol video. And they scanned this vehicle and it was suspicious. They didn't have the tools to cut that vehicle open. It was a pickup truck, and they noticed that there was some weird stuff going on inside the wheel wells of the truck. They had to call the fucking fire department to come in there and cut that truck open because our Border Patrol couldn't afford a fucking angle grinder, jaws of life, hell, a fucking pair of tin snips from Harbor Freight. And they had to call in the fire department. Seriously?
Service still chases down financial crimes. They're still chasing down child exploitation. Those are serious things for Treasury or for FBI to do. But there's a question is if that's the first priority for Secret Service.
Senator, the Secret Service is in need of dramatic reforms. They do have a protective detail element that is their priority, and also an investigation side. My understanding is that that investigation side is often used to train the protective detailed officers, but clearly They are not focusing on what their true duty is, and it needs to get back onto what they were created for, and that was the protective detail mission and emergency situations that they need to help plan and prepare for and defend.
Thank you. This committee made a request to the Secretary of Homeland Security last year, and by the way, also the head of the FBI, to be able to come before this committee and to do what every Secretary of Homeland Security has done for the last 20 years, every single year, unbroken until last year. And then the secretary refused to come before this committee in an open session and talk about national threats. Now, the former chairman protested strongly.
All right. Well, if you're requested to show up at a committee and you don't show up, then you needed to be escorted to that committee, kicking and screaming if it may be.
Let me tell you another challenge we've had with Homeland Security in the past.
Because I guarantee you, if I was supposed to go to court and I didn't show up for my court date, there would be a warrant for my arrest. But oh, that's right. These are elected officials. They're above the law.
On the southern border to the minute. But if I ask for what happened last month, they'll say we're still gathering that data. We're not asking for anything other than what Congress is supposed to get. That's the ability to be able to see data and to have real oversight over DHS. And that has been a failure of this DHS, along with multiple other issues on that. When we request the data for basic things like how many special interest aliens were allowed across the border, if it was last year, we had to find out on our own. It was 70,000 people that were targeted by this administration as a potential national security risk, that were not just found at the border, that were released when they were found at the border. 70,000 people just from last year in the country right now that this administration declared at the border, they're a potential national security risk. Now, I know you're not going to do that, but when we ask for the data and for the information, when we say, how's the National Vetting Center working? Do you have the connection between it to be able to screen individuals there? We're just doing our oversight responsibility. You've served in Congress before and did a great job on that and did oversight. We want to still be able to do the same thing. Will you provide data to this committee so that we can cooperate with you to help?
Senator, I will follow the law and be transparent with you and allow you to do the due diligence towards oversight that you are tasked with.
I have absolutely no doubt about that, Governor. I have absolutely no doubt. Looking forward to you serving in that role. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Governor Noem. You are almost done.
Okay.
We've been through a lot of questions. I think you've handled the questions very well. And there's going to be, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and I think the ranking member has a few, and I think we'll be done very shortly. I think a lot of Americans, including some conservatives, misunderstand the First Amendment. They think the First Amendment says that Facebook has to publish my opinion, or the Wall Street Journal has to publish my opinion, or we need to force them to be fair. That's not what the First Amendment's about at all. The First Amendment really doesn't apply to telling private companies what we can or cannot say. YouTube censored me, and I despise their policy. They actually took down speeches I made on the floor. But really, I don't have a legal recourse other than I can complain about YouTube being unfair and not hosting, both sides of an issue. However, with the government, though, there is a rule. The First Amendment specifically says Congress shall pass no law banning or abridging speech. And this is what really got us worried about, what not only the FBI was doing, but the Department of Homeland Security, actually meeting with these companies on a weekly basis. And imagine the chilling effect of this. Imagine that there are cameras here, that they're going to end their filming of this interview and then decide, well, what she said or what he said really was misinformation and we should edit that out. Can you imagine? It's just hard for me to imagine that the media has not, which once defended the First Amendment, hasn't been in more of an uproar over the government meeting with the media to decide things. Some of this we didn't know. And then Elon Musk bought Twitter. People asked him, they said, well, you paid $44 billion for Twitter. Isn't that too much? And he said, I paid $44 billion to defend free speech.
Exactly.
Amazing service. Not only to open up the forum to more viewpoints, but to point out what the government was doing. In this last week, we heard from Mark Zuckerberg, who said that the pushiness, the coerciveness of government meeting with them was unprecedented, and that they pushed back. But he also said worse than them just sort of telling him he should restrict speech. They also threatened him. They threatened to come after him through antitrust law. They threatened to remove parts of, Section 230 of the liability protection. Just to imagine this bully nature of government. And I know you're opposed to that, but if you're confirmed and you're in a position of saying, we're just no longer sending people to meet with media. And the way I describe it is to talk about constitutionally protected speech, because some will say, oh, well, what about, pornography, or what about child trafficking? Those are illegal. Those are not constitutionally protected speech. You have every ability to meet with that. But for constitutionally protected speech, will you tell us in America that you will no longer be sending government agents to meet with the media?
Yes, Senator, I'll work with you to ensure that civil rights and liberties are protected and that we are not in the misinformation and disinformation space like the current DHS is.
The only other thing I would ask on this basis is we will send requests. We sent requests previously, sometimes and often bipartisan requests for information. The Twitter files, Michael Schellenberger, Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss did a great job of showing what was happening in Twitter and how they were cooperating with government. I think the other investigation that needs to occur is who were the people in government they were talking to? Do they still work at DHS? And can we make sure that they're not in a position of authority? And this is not something I'm going to tell you to do. It's just a request that you have your own investigation, that you have people.
Well, those people need fired.
We're going to look
Publicly fired.
political bias to work and trying to influence speech and restrict.
And I know a lot of people don't like it when I say publicly. But a lot of people would rather chop off their hand than be publicly humiliated. And that's a fact. And you publicly humiliate someone, then you got them. And what I mean by publicly humiliate these people that were tied to the Twitter files, you show up with a camera crew, put all these cameras up in their face, say you're fired, and you got 5 minutes to clear your desk out and walk them out the fucking door off of property. And then have the police out there waiting and file a trespass card on them. Meaning that if they come back onto property, they're going to jail. Period.
Through and challenge those numbers. Some of them we don't even know where they came from. I don't think that's helpful to the very important mission, if confirmed, that you're going to be dealing with. So I hope in the future that we're actually dealing with facts. You've mentioned many times that you do want to deal with facts and real data. And again, we heard a lot here that's not real data, and we should not operate that way. And if confirmed, when we move forward, I'm going to look forward to working with you based on the facts and understand where the real threats are, how we need to appropriate resources to make sure we're meeting those threats. And let's take this hyper-partisanship out of such an important issue of Homeland Security. We have way too much partisanship in this country, and it's resulted in a polarization of people here. We've got to come together as this country. We've got to lock arms and understand that we're all proud Americans. We all want to do what's best for the American people and solve the issues that are before us. So in that spirit.
But it seems the Democrats don't want to do what's best for the country. They want to do what's best for their bank account.
Let's move away from this toxic political environment that we have in the country and celebrate what's great about our country and the spirit of bringing the American people together. So I have one question before we turn it over to other members. As a member of this committee, as well as the Armed Services Committee, I've focused a great deal on the safe integration of drones in our airspace while addressing the growing threats that drones possess. We certainly see what drones are doing in changing the face of warfare, whether it's in Ukraine and other battlefields around the world. We are very concerned about the weaponization of those drones and what it could mean to the security here.
See, I think drones are a great thing, but yet the people that hate technology hate drones. Because, oh my God, he flew a drone up in the air and he could see into my backyard. Well, your fence is only 6 feet tall. So I can walk up and go, oh, look, I'm doing a video of your backyard. I can see what's in your backyard. Like so many people don't realize. Because trust me, I've been confronted numerous times. The latest one about a month ago here in my apartment complex. You have no right to privacy in public. So say you got a big picture window like my daughter does in her living room. I could go out, stand in the road, video everything that she's doing in her living room if she doesn't have the curtains closed. Because if I can see into your home from public, you have no right to privacy. That's like all these, mainly moms, back when we had every kid home from school doing, at home schooling. I don't know how many videos I saw of a mom walking around naked while their son was doing at home learning on camera. And for one, I think it's weird that several of them, the children were boys that were double digit ages. And these moms were walking around with their tatas hanging right out. Because it's my home. But if my wife went and walked in front of your 12-year-old son with his tatas out, oh, she goes to jail. That's child abuse. But you can do it because you're their mom? No. And the second thing is, once your child reaches a certain age, they shouldn't know what the hell you look like naked. Period. You can buy a lock and put it on your bedroom door. But they don't want to do that.
Security Secretary.
Got a brief follow-up to that.
Sure.
So it's data
Yes.
and facts that we can all agree on that drive our policy and not political theater. Would you agree?
Certainly, sir, we need to be addressing facts and information rather than political theater. We also need to speak truth to facts. So I think it's important that we're willing to confront our challenges head on and have those conversations. And you'll see me back at your office door very soon to continue our work together.
Very good. Thank you.
And I want to second basically what Senator Peters has said, like on records requests, I've told him and I plan on it. It's going to be administration of my party. But if he wants records and they're legitimate records, we're going to sign requests together and we'd like to get the records. It also helps though, and I think Senator Langford mentioned this, is you ask a question, not you, but to the administration or any administration, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll get back to you on it. Many times I've even asked in advance, and I would suggest that we ask in advance together. We ask in advance, if you're coming in a month, we say, we want this data, be prepared to talk about it. And if you are, you'll have many more friends on both sides Because what usually happens, and that's why I don't like screening the question. If it's a technical question that needs data, we're going to tell you in advance, at least I will, and we want you to come prepared with that. And that goes a long way, because really what happens is we get stiff-armed. They say, we'll get back to you. And then we have no way to force you really, other than we could cut the money off, and nobody ever does that. But you'll have 200,000 people working for you. By goodness, send your experts out, scour the records. And it is true. I mean, facts are difficult, and sometimes there's different spins on the same set of facts.
Yeah, and
but I
facts
think
hurt
that will help.
people's little
On the
feelings.
I think we need more facts, so I'm more than willing to work with the ranking member on doing something on drones. I don't want every sheriff out there shooting up in the sky at stuff. We got to figure out, we got to get the truth about, do we really have drones everywhere flying all the time? How many of them are planes? How many of them are drones? And let's go through this, and then let's figure out, and then let's talk about
I
how
can
we
go on
bring drones
Amazon
down.
right
Are we
now,
interrupting
buy a
the
really
flow
nice
of
DJI
cellular
drone
signal through that? Are we doing it with a warrant?
for like
What are we gonna do
$500.
with all the Americans' data that we've collected to take down drones? If
I
we have to
take the
all that
2-hour
$2
test.
worth of data, there's a lot of innocent people's data
That
that's being
costs
collected and that
$60,
is that being gotten rid of. So I think there are ways we can get to
and
that
I
place.
can legally
Obviously,
fly
nobody wants
that
drones.
that
The only
drone.
other thing I'd add on drones before I turn it over to Senator Langford is, look, I'm all for the NFL being protected, the Super Bowl being protected. They need to pay. They are a very rich organization. They want drones flying over.
Exactly.
I'm all for it. The NFL ought to pay the government if the government's doing it, or we ought to have private contractors doing it, but they shouldn't just get it for free. Senator Langford.
Exactly.
Thanks again. As Senator Paul will remember on this, there used to be a public-facing website that all Americans could actually get the data, what's happening on the border, what's actually moving. And then when the numbers got bad, that seemed to disappear. And then we couldn't even get the data anymore.
Bring the website back.
Finding ways to be able to have everybody has the ability to be able to see some of this data as well on it. There's a reason that the DHS.
We should have all the data.
This is a really important role.
Because the Freedom of Information Act.
It is a national security role. And we're grateful that you stepped into this, but it is important to get you on the task to be able to make sure that's out there. You mentioned
the government doesn't want you to have the information.
A morale problem.
Well, at least the information that you want.
That is because
they want you to have the information that they're willing to give you,
to be able to protect the United States of America,
which
have felt like they've been sidelined.
Is probably not
been able to do
true.
The job that they really signed up for. And what I'm hearing from you is you're going to allow them to do their job again. What has been historically true for a long time, that federal law enforcement is there to actually help protect the country and the citizens in those communities.
Man, that
to do that, and that's helpful.
Senator Langford.
2 quick things that I want to be able to mention on this. One is,
man, he's got like an epic jaw.
This, and we can talk about this at a different time. But CBP facilities that are along the border are really run by a different entity called.
Look at those lines going down, and then it's like pow. He's got
do updates on their facilities.
He's got epic jawline. Damn, bro.
Somebody who lives 3,000 miles away and who doesn't actually do border patrol work, they actually design and oversee their facilities. That's a problem that we've got to be able to fix. So we've worked to be able to give more flexibility to CBP, that when they have difficulty and challenges there, they have the ability to be able to make those changes. But I'm not going to ask you to make a commitment to this because this is just one of those detail areas. But will you commit in the future to working with us, that this committee and you can work together to be able to figure out how the folks that are on the field can actually make decisions about the facilities they work in?
Oh my God, bro. I'm not going to ask you to make a commitment, but will you commit? And remember, everyone, I've survived 2 strokes. There's 2 parts of my brain that don't work anymore. And why the hell do I appear to have so much more common sense, so much more brain than a lot of people? I'm not going to ask you to make a commitment, but will you commit? And I'm like,
held him there and detained him there. Now, we worked through all the process to be able to get him back. My question is, that same bag went through TSA security in my state before it went through security overseas. And so one of the questions that I've asked is, why were those rounds picked up there and not here? Now, we don't have the full answer to that yet, but that's just one of those TSA questions that we need to have. Americans, right?
You want to know why? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI hires. Instead of hiring the people that you need that are fully qualified, no, you got to hire Susan that was Steve a month ago. You know, it's basically Steve in a damn dress. You know, because got to have so many of this and so many of that working for you.
3 years did he get his truck back? I mean, that's crazy, the things we do. Let's have some common sense, and hopefully someone overseeing it will allow that. Senator Blumenthal, you're going to finish this up.
Thank you.
Oh, government have common sense?
That means I get unlimited amounts of time.
Okay.
Not really.
Oh, God, I don't like this guy.
I want to sort of continue the emphasis on bipartisanship.
All right. I just thought of something.
Especially on immigration reform. What this nation needs is comprehensive.
Could you imagine
reform? We know about
being a
H-1B visas,
substitute teacher and you're calling roll in your class,
the United States to have more workers that
and you come across this guy with that last name?
There has to be better border security generally. We know we need to provide some kind of path to earn
I had
citizenship for a lot of the undocumented
substitute
people in
teachers
this country, and we know it's possible.
that didn't know the difference between Michael and Michelle.
Senate, as you will recall, passed a comprehensive immigration reform measure. Overwhelmingly, it was bipartisan.
3 times I got sent to the principal's
going
office
through the Judiciary Committee, but obviously
for calling a
involved
substitute
Homeland
teacher a
Security,
stupid
and
bitch.
I hope that we can continue as Senator Langford was a part of
The third time, it was the same principal all 3 times.
the last session to expand on.
I go in there and he goes, "Were you called Michelle again?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir."
Reform.
So he goes down there. He writes on the chalkboard, Michelle.
Domestic terrorism,
Then he writes Michael, and he goes, "Do you know the difference in this?"
which we discussed during my previous.
She said, "Well, he looks similar to me."
Including
He said,
not just migrant
"Leave.
crime and radicalization by
I will
ISIS, which
teach
are
this
real
a class."
problem.
He made her
Ask you about
leave.
domestic terrorism events unrelated to groups.
It was a English class,
Rise in anti-Semitism.
and she didn't know the difference between Michael and Michelle. So I can imagine
and
some
all of your concern with anti-Semitism, racist
substitute teacher trying to pronounce his name.
Buffalo, Pittsburgh. There's a shorthand for these violent terrorist acts against people in the United States.
Yes, Senator, I'm very concerned about what we've seen in this country as far as anti-Semitic violence that has happened. In fact, last year during our legislative session, I brought legislation to more clearly define.
That's
civic
because everybody's all free Palestine.
With you to continue to do what we can to make sure that we are addressing this rising threat and not facilitating it in this country.
And I just want to make sure that when you say we're protecting Americans against terrorism, that we're protecting all Americans, including people in mosques, in churches, in synagogues.
Yes.
People, regardless of their
Because
their race, their background.
They're a U.S. citizen. They have every right that everybody else has.
I hope you'll commit to that effort.
Yes, correct. Thank you, Senator, and I look forward to working with you to do that.
In my closing minute and a half, I just want to call your attention to an effort that I've led to help reunite.
You know, just because you want to
their parents, children who were separated.
Get down on your hands and knees on a rug
separation
for your deity.
In the last administration, I have introduced a measure called Keep.
I don't make fun of those people.
Not only to limit separation of families at or near ports of entry, but also the families belong.
Why do
act for several Congresses to help?
You know, why should it be any problem of mine who they pray to?
Victims of this policy and who still are not big back with their parents. I hope that you will support that kind of effort.
That's
Senator, the Trump administration.
that's like I've had so many people say, well, why don't you talk to people about religion? You know, you're supposed to go and spread the gospel. And I'm like, if you don't know the gospel now, then what I'm going to say isn't going to help. Because I've had people come up to me and say, how do you know heaven's real? And I'm like, how do you know it isn't? Because even if heaven was an imaginary place, where there's a heaven, there's a hell. So say both could be imaginary places. Well, I'd rather put my full faith and believing I'm going to a nice place and doing whatever I can to ensure that I make it to that nice place. Instead of being like, I don't think it's real, and then possibly ending up where it's really hot. You know, that's just the simplest way I could put it. And I've had people argue with me about it. And I'm like, you can believe what you want. And if how I believe, make sure that I go up there instead of down there, then I'm going to believe that I'm going up there. And then they're all like, how do you know all that stuff in the Bible's real? Because there's proof of it. You can look up videos of chariot wheels with axles on them in the Red Sea. What story is that about? Moses parting the Red Sea, getting his people to the other side as the army was chasing them down. That army got to the middle of the Red Sea. Moses had crossed with his people to the other side. The Red Sea closed. That's why there's chariot wheels all in a line in the Red Sea. But no, the Bible's fake. So is this over? 2.5 hours? Or is this just a break? I think it's over. And hell, nobody's watching anyway because people would rather go sit around a virtual campfire and shoot the shit and talk bad about me. Yes, I've heard it, people. I could jump into your live stream. You'll never know I'm even in there. But all I got to say to that is, who's got more subscribers? 7,450. Yeah. So talk bad about me all you want. Whoa. I don't know who this dude is talking, but we're not going to watch him. Lloyd Austin giving farewell speech. Yeah, Lloyd, I don't know who you are. I don't care. All right, everyone. That's the end of the live stream. So as always, peace out.